the starting lineup of your favorite show and producer.
And a bench to bench. Change hit in the air to deep right field. Back goes Clemente. At the save. He's done. Get out of here, baseball. He's gone. Oh, my God. Can you believe it? Johnny Bench has tied it up. The Cincinnati Reds win the World Series in force rate. It was a sweep. In the dirt. It's a wild pitch. Here comes Foster. The Reds win the pennant.
Perkins won the game. That ball is fair. Cincinnati's ahead. 2 games to none. Welcome, Joe Randa to Cincinnati. Adam Dunn has done it again.
Benzinger backing and calling. And the 1990 World Championship belongs to the Cincinnati Reds.
Marty, yes. This is Adam from Milwaukee. Hey, Adam, how you doing? I'm good. How are you? Good. Do you think Scott Hatteberg's a good player?
Done up there with the bases loaded, the outfield deep and around toward right, and the 1-0 on the way to the plate. Swung on, long drive, right field, and this one belongs to the Reds.
And a high drive, hit back into deep right field. Junior has just knocked the door down to the 500 club.
Benson's first home run is a walk-off winner. That ball had a family.
And De La Cruz is, oh my goodness, look at this kid run. My, oh my, that is a triple.
Matt McLain's first big league bomb.
Spencer Steer's first big league hit is a home run to straightaway center field. Joey Votto's done it again.
The pitch. Votto swings high in the air. Right field. Yes! He pointed to the dugout to say, I told you. That is Joey Votto's 315th career go-ahead ribby. Only Johnny Bench had more as a Red.
And I can't tell you how much it means to play in front of everyone here in Cincinnati as a Red. What a gift. What a tremendous gift. So thank you. Thank you.
I think I can speak for all of Reds country. Joey Votto, thank you.
High drive. Left center field. Racing back to the line. Bourgeois. The Reds are National League Central Division champions. In the air, left center field. Did he? He did. He did. Red win. Win. Liner to right field. Genius, the first Red ever. With 4 home runs in a game. Can you believe it? In the air, down the right field line. Goes to Amadeus. The Reds have won on a 3-run home run on opening day by Ramon Hernandez. A strike away and out away is Homer Bailey. Ground ball to third. Frazier gloves. Throw to first, and Homer Bailey, for the second time in his major league career, has tossed the no-hitter. Oh, God. Are you kidding me? Holy Moses, the second player in major league history to hit 7 home runs in the first 10 games. In the air, and the Reds win it. What a dream beginning to the career of Trent Bruce.
Well, hey, what's going on? Nick Kirby here, joined by my guy, Craig Sandlin. Welcome to a very special edition of Chatterbox Reds as we are filling in for the off-the-bench fellas today. It's opening day eve. Craig, are you ready to preview the Cincinnati Reds?
I am excited, been excited for weeks. I'm ready for the season to kick off tomorrow. It's going to be a fun 6 months or so.
Yeah, looking forward to it. We'll get into it all today. We'll be live for the next 2 hours. Scheduled to appear today, see Trent Rosecrans of The Athletic, Charlie Goldsmith of the Cincinnati Enquirer, Tom Nichols, the voice of the Dayton Dragons, Mark Sheldon of MLB.com, Justin Kinner of ESPN Dayton. And then at the end, we're going to do a special little segment. I'll save that for a little bit later on. But Craig, let's start off with just a little bit of conversation here. as we do count down to opening day. I think we're about 30 hours away. No one has the clock on or anything, but tough spring training. I mean, the vibes were as high as they possibly could have been going into spring training, and then they kind of started to fall. It all started with the Noelvi Marte suspension.
Well, let's be honest, Nick. It all started with your trip to Arizona is what really happened here. Everything was going great. The team was looking solid. Everybody was healthy. And then you go to Arizona and just one after another, they all started to tumble.
It screwed everything up. I will say, though, Craig, I probably better have a big, knock on wood here. The pitching staff, I think, is a lot healthier than I probably would have anticipated going in, because remember, there was a lot of questions with Frankie Montas. Will he be healthy on opening day? Well, he's answered that. He's starting on opening day. The rotation, Brandon Williams is the only guy that's completely not healthy, and I don't think he was going to make the opening day rotation anyways. Nick Lodolo, every sign points to him being ready in a couple weeks. Now, again, with Nick Lodolo, we always kind of hold our breath because he's had a lot of injuries, but the pitching overall, top to bottom, the Reds are in a lot better shape than the Cardinals. They're in a lot better shape than the Pirates. They're in a lot better shape than the Brewers going into at least opening day.
Yeah, and when you look at this roster versus the roster that we started last year with for the Reds are starting this year in a much better position than they started last year as a whole, not only on the pitching staff, but in the position players as well. You talk about a guy with Nick Lodolo, who has an opportunity to really be an ace on this squad if he can be healthy. Now, the positive side on that front is that seemingly this is preventative, right? So Nick Lodolo is going to go. He's going to make 2 starts in the minors, and then every indication is that come April 10th, he's going to be ready to rock and roll. Now, on the positive side, you've already filled that void with guys like Nick Martinez, who's stepped up this spring and shown that he has the capability to really step in and be a top of the rotation guy for the Reds. So everything from the Marte suspension to the injuries that have happened across the entire diamond, you're still left with a roster, thanks to the work that Nick Krall and this team have done, that is significantly better than it was last year, and a team that overachieved last year as it was. So the question becomes, okay, last year's team overachieved. What realistically should have been that win-loss total for them? And then you look at this improved roster this year, and you say, okay, last year's team overachieved. If this team just does what they're supposed to do, what does that outcome look like for them? And barring more significant injuries, which of course last year the Reds faced a number of injuries that hindered their outlook over the course of the season. I mean, this team still has tremendous upside, regardless of the injuries that have happened. Now, one of the things we'll be waiting on today is who's going to fill that 26th man roster spot. There are plenty of speculation going on around there about who that 26th man is going to be. Is it going to be Bubba Thompson? Are they going to go external? Is it going to be Jacob Hurtubise? What is that roster going to look like? We'll be able to talk with the guys about that later today and see what their opinion is. But ultimately, this team is in a much better position today than they were a year ago. And so it all comes down to, can they perform and can they live up to the hype?
Yeah, on that 26th man roster spot, I think one of 2 things are happening. Number one, I think they're probably still looking at the waiver wire to see if there's anyone last minute that they can snag. I think this team absolutely with some of the injuries, position player wise, they could find a quality player. Why not take a shot at it? The other thing is they also might be waiting on the Matt McLain injury news to see if they need to put him on the 60-day IL and make and if they do that, then they don't have to make a 40-man move to put someone like Bubba Thompson on the roster. So I think it's Bubba Thompson. If it is anyone internal, I would wager a significant amount of money on that. But we will wait and see. Right to what you were talking about last year. Last year was it was a fun year, but it was such a strange year because the Reds had so many things go right for them, but they also still had quite a few things go wrong. Like the Reds were 34-29 in 1-run games. We know that's not sustainable, especially when you're a 500 team or slightly above 500 team overall. The Reds had incredible work overall from their bullpen up until about the last month of the season. Is that sustainable? I don't know. They also had every prospect that came up they hit on, and they played really well right away. We know there might be some regression there, but at the same time, the pitching staff was injured the entire year. I mean, if you just take last year's pitching staff and you compare it to where this year's is, and I'm not just talking even on the major leagues, I'm talking about the next guys in line, the Connor Phillips, Carson Spires, Lyon Richardson in AAA. It's two completely different worlds. And then there's also this guy named Elly De La Cruz that played really well for a month and then kind of struggled down the stretch. I think he's going to be a lot better this year, and Elly De La Cruz could take the Reds ceiling so much higher. So there's so many things, and one thing that's really easy to do, and we can really overrate it, is like your schedule to start the season. But the Reds schedule, the first 20 games is very favorable. The Reds will be obviously going up against the Washington Nationals, a team that is completely entrenched in a rebuild mode. Doesn't mean you're going to win the series. Doesn't mean you won't get swept. The Reds got swept by them last year. But then the Reds have the Phillies, the Mets, the Brewers, the White Sox, Mariners, and Angels kind of to start their season. Just to kind of give you a comparison, the the St. Louis Cardinals, who are without Sonny Gray to start the year, without their entire outfield, they're at the LA Dodgers for a 4-game series to start the year. Then they're at the Padres, home against the Marlins, home against the Phillies, at the Diamondbacks. So, again, I mean, the Cardinals could easily have a great start and just be able to beat up on some good teams. The Reds could struggle against bad teams. But the schedule's there for the Reds, I hope, to kind of get themselves off to a good start, which has been definitely one of the problems in kind of ever. Like, it feels like the Reds have always had a bad start outside of a couple years here and there. They had that one random start like in the middle of the full rebuild where they started like 5-0. Do you remember that, Craig? Like 2017, 16?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, what do you think about the schedule here to start this year? I mean, do you kind of buy that kind of helps the Reds here at all?
Well, I certainly think that it gives them an opportunity to gain some momentum early in the year, right? Last year, they start the season, 5-15 or something. And, once you get that far behind the 8 ball, and despite the fact that this is a 162 game season, like if they had just gone 7-13 during that time, we may have been looking at a playoff team last year, right? So that start can make or break a season. And when you've got, 6 series that you just rattled off, and the 2 most difficult opponents are going to be the Phillies and the Mariners. I mean, it sets you up to really be in a good position early on. You shared a graphic yesterday. I think it was the DraftKings no free ads odds of the last team to win a game or last team to lose a game this season, and the Reds were second on the list at plus 1,000, I think, and they were behind
best in the NL.
And so, I mean, not only is the schedule lining up, but the roster lining up and is working out. I mean, when you've got Frankie Montas, Hunter Green, and Nick Martinez going 1, 2, 3 in an opening series, you've got to feel pretty good based on what you've seen from them over the spring and in the past. Now, there's been some inconsistencies with guys like Hunter Green that are going to certainly be interesting to see how it shapes up this year. But the schedule as a whole, when you're looking at potentially going, 3 to 5 games over 500 to start the season, that can put you in a really good spot for the long run. And put you in a position to do what maybe the 1990 Reds did and go wire to wire.
I love it. I think this isn't something that really matters a whole lot. It might matter some, but I really feel if the Reds get off to a good start, the city's really going to rally behind them, kind of like they did last year. If they don't get off to a good start, it's cold in April. You're going to lose a lot of the casual support. So how much is that worth in terms of wins and losses? Probably not a lot, but it did definitely feel like at times the team last year did feed off of the energy that was brought, and then almost kind of also felt at the end of the year when there was some injuries, and then football season started. The energy kind of went down a little bit. So that's something kind of interesting to watch.
It'll be interesting to see. I mean, not only the momentum, but you said obviously football season. I think the Reds have to really be in a competitive position in order to maintain market share when the Bengals season starts. So I think it'll be really key for them to get off hot, like you said, get fans interested early in the season, and then track on that playoff stretch down the run, hopefully.
Frankie Montas, the Reds opening day starter. I don't know if I ever asked you about this, Craig. Done so many shows over the last month, which is what I do, not complaining. But what's your thoughts on him getting the ball on opening day? Some interesting comments from him. He seems to be, really embracing it. It seems like Hunter Green took it really well. I would have fully expected that he was going to be the guy just to get opening day almost more by default than anything else. What's kind of your overall thoughts on that decision?
Yeah, it was certainly an interesting decision. I think you also laid out the second start of the season, and that puts Hunter Green starting his second start at home rather than on the road. So, there's a potential there for it to be in play in terms of how is it setting Hunter Green up for long-term success, not just opening day start and whatever that may do for his mentality. I think ultimately you're looking at a guy in Hunter Green who's been working on some pitches this spring, trying to add to the repertoire, and may not necessarily be season ready, maybe hasn't been stretched out the way that Frankie has. You saw Frankie's last start, he looked really good. And then Hunter's start after that, I think he only went 3 innings or something like that, just as a final tune-up. So Hunter's been working all offseason and all spring on adding a pitch to the repertoire so that he has more than just the 2-pitch approach that he has had in the past. Ultimately, if he can throw that third pitch for a strike, it's going to lead to success for him over the course of the season. But, it may have just been a thing where that's the way spring lined up too. I mean, rather than trying to, manipulate the roster in the rotation there at the end of spring training, you just go with what's been working. I don't read too much into it. I think at the end of the day, Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo are going to be battling for open day starts for hopefully a number of years. Hopefully they're both healthy, and hopefully they continue to progress into the top of the rotation starters that we believe they both can be. So Frankie Montas taking that opening day start for this year doesn't really say anything for long term. And like you said, both Frankie and Hunter were taking the news seemingly very well in the media at media day on Monday or yesterday, whenever that was.
Yeah, and see Trent Rosecrans, we're having on just a second, actually pushed back on he said there's no way that had anything to do with it. The not having to face the Phillies. I do, though, think that is a nice advantage of him starting the second game. Because if you look at the Reds' first several series, that Phillies lineup, especially on the road in Philadelphia, that's the one team that I think you'd be most worried of a game kind of getting away from you. So I think that is a nice little advantage that they do have thrown in there.
Yeah, I mean, fans need to be ready. This team can start the season 3-0 against the Nationals and then end up 3-3 after their series with the Phillies. So let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Let's take the season a game at a time, like we have always preached on this show, at least when Trace isn't on. Let's just enjoy the season for what it is. Ultimately, Andrew Abbott, Graham Ashcraft, and then Frankie are going to have to go against the Phillies. So let's just hope for progression. Let's hope for these guys continuing to improve. And let's not forget that, 4 of the 5 guys in the rotation are really still essentially on their first full pro season based on the number of starts that they've made in the major leagues.
All right, well, let's go and bring in our first guest. This is C. Trent Rosecrans, senior MLB writer with The Athletic. C. Trent, what's going on, my man?
Oh, not much. Just taking a break from a little coaching action, a little baseball action.
Are you the full-on manager? You first base coach,
no.
third base coach?
No, I'm the guy who shows up every once in a while, throws, and talks too much.
Now you don't critique the other coaches, do you?
Oh, no, they're great. And one of them is also my daughter's English teacher, so, I got to be careful.
So So Trent was able to catch you right at the end in down in Arizona. You did a little bit of a split there. You were there for the beginning, came back at the end. On Monday, the Reds did they had a scrimmage at Great America Ballpark. What is that like? I've never been to one of those like official scrimmages. Is there actually like energy? Is there actually intensity? It sounds like Connor Phillips was pretty intense, but was there any other than him?
It's hard to tell. I'm up in the press box. There were some people there, like I think season ticket holders and some others. And it's practice. We're talking about practice.
Trent, the Reds, have you ever heard any explanation as to why the Reds choose to go the route of coming back to Cincinnati? At least they've done it over the last several years, having like a self-scrimmage and workouts as opposed to some other teams. Like I know the Dodgers and Angels, they were playing too, like actually exhibition games in front of full crowds. I know there's some other teams that have done games versus like their prospects. Any rationales why the Reds just choose to go that route?
Yeah, I mean, they've done it a couple times. They did it in Montreal a couple of years ago, went to Texas a couple of years ago. They used to also do occasionally, they'd go to like Dayton or Louisville and play a game there. It's kind of fallen out of favor just for them. I think it's, they're always going to open at home and they're always going to have a 3-hour time change and coming from Arizona to home. So I think it is just kind of letting the guys get back, get their body changed a little bit to the time. And also, for some of these guys, they've never been to Cincinnati or barely spent any time here. So you have your whole families coming in. You set up where you're going to live a lot of times right then. And that's so you have like 3 days to move in to where you're going to live, to where your family's going to come. So there's a lot. Like, I understand from a fan point of view, but then a lot of it is because I'm coming back too. These days are pretty important to me. I get to see my family. A lot of these guys don't see their families during spring training. And so this is the first time they get back. So they get a little bit of normalcy and getting ready. Getting ready for the season isn't just about what happens on the field. It is also what happens off the field.
Yeah, you talk about getting ready for the season and how it's more than just on the field. A lot of us fans don't necessarily get to see the behind the scenes of spring training. You mentioned you were out in Arizona for a while. We've seen on Twitter, X, whatever, some of the 3-point contests that go on. We saw recently that the Reds had dinner at Jeff Ruby's and had the naked karate girls there performing. Can you talk about off the field what you see from this team compared to previous teams? It seems like they're a little bit more relaxed and ready for what comes.
Yeah, it's an interesting perspective because last year, like the culture was a big part of this. David Bell spent a lot of time in spring training establishing in this. And one of those things that happened last year was there were so many guys who joined the team during the season, the call-ups. I mean, we all know the names and we can go through them. But the stuff they did in spring training, they were able to kind of get to know each other before then. So like when they walked into the clubhouse in June or July or May, it wasn't new. You already knew these guys. They knew Elly De La Cruz was coming up. They knew Matt McLain was coming up, and they wanted them to be a part of the team. And I think it was a big part why everybody just kind of fit in well. And what's really interesting is you remove a large piece from that, in Joey Votto, and then you bring in some veteran guys like Frankie Montas, Jamer Candelario, Brent Suter, Emilio Pagan, and what's really interesting about these guys that they brought in it was almost like they fit in immediately, and that is something that, listen, I know a lot of people might just kind of wave their hand at, but it's something that David Bell and Nick Krall have really focused on when they get guys. Frankie Montas has been just phenomenal. I think maybe some people saw it in his press conference yesterday. or 2 days ago, that he is really he's this guy who had a great reputation, and he's fit right in. All those veterans really have. They've been kind of seamless. And when you talk about Montas and Candelario, they're guys who you see in a lot of clubhouses. You'll see like little factions, and you'll see like, and there's a huge natural one in baseball, the language. Both Montas and Candelario are very, very comfortable in English. And what they do is they use that to bring people together, and bring in the guys who are maybe not as comfortable, and you'll see them mixing them in and using the English and Spanish together to make everybody feel welcome. And it was really interesting. There was like this table in the clubhouse, and you saw most days Pagan, Frankie, Luke Maley, Lucas Sims, and it was like this older group, and Spencer Steer was kind of in there as well, that was just always kind of there and engaging everybody, and it was really interesting to see. It stood out to me, to be honest.
All right, see, Trent, the two questions that everyone wants an answer to today. I'm assuming you probably don't have any new news to report, but we're still waiting on Matt McLain and his the word on how his second opinion went, and the 26-man roster spot. I'll just ask you this: do you think it's past the point of the Reds maybe getting someone off the waiver wire, where they're maybe just waiting on? You still think that's a possibility?
I think it's a possibility. I mean, I think what they might do is they were searching that, seeing who was available, get through waivers, get the claims processed, hold on. Oh, sorry, never mind. Yeah. Okay, so reporting stuff. As you can understand, let's just say there will be some updates on something soon. Anywho, the 26-man, I think there's still a possibility that you see somebody from outside. They make sure that they can get them here and all those kind of things. So, but it's also possible that it's Bubba Thompson or Jacob Hurtubise or something like that. So there are some options, and we will see. In the end, we're talking about the 26th man, and a 26th man that is there because you have several players who are not. and that's a simple thing. Sorry, I'm a little distracted right now. So that's good.
Craig, I think you're Craig.
Let's start with this question. What time is the news that you just got embargoed to, so that our viewers can be sure to stay posted to your X account?
They won't have to wait too long.
Okay. All right. So you heard it here first. Breaking news may or may not be breaking on this show. We'll see. Something will be happening. All right. Let's ask the other question that the chat has asked. Obviously, this team is a lot more experienced, especially in the. Oh,
hold on. Let me. Sorry, this is the sausage is made.
It's okay. Let's make it.
Hold on. I can keep me there because we can see.
Okay.
This is real behind the scenes stuff here.
Yeah,
folks.
this is.
Sorry, this is how the world works.
Yep. Hey, we're enjoying this.
Okay.
So.
Yes. So Matt McLain had surgery yesterday to address cartilage damage and repair his labrum in his left shoulder. An exact timeline is still TBD, as it has a wide range of possibilities, and we hope to have Matt back this season. So that's not the best news.
Breaking news: the second opinion turned into a surgery,
and that's not,
which wasn't necessarily unexpected, right? Yeah,
right. So, yeah. Surgery yesterday. Sorry, I'm typing while I do this. This is exciting, isn't it? Like behind the scenes action.
I love this. This is like when you see Adam Schefter on the trade deadline day.
Yeah, kind of.
And he's like tweeting as he's trying to fill in the ESPN Sports Center broadcasters.
And it's like, how do I spell cartilage?
I'm not going to help you there, buddy.
Yeah, Dr. Rosecrans is my sister, not me. What did I say? Repair his labrum.
Cartilage damage in his labrum.
Timeline is TBD. Hope to get him back this season. Sorry, yes.
Yeah. Breaking news.
This is just fascinating content.
We love it. This is great for us.
our chat is loving this, C-Trend. They
all right, there you go. That's tweeted out. So you guys got it before I tweeted it.
Wow. You heard it here first. Chatterbox Sports Insiders. So for everybody in the chat, you got the news before anybody else. So you should feel privileged on that. So let's go ahead and ask the obvious question. Okay, so he's had surgery that likely means an extended time on the IL. Even if they're hoping that he's back this year, it's still going to mean several months most likely. So what does that do for what we were just talking about with the 26th man? What does that do for anybody else on the roster?
I don't know that it changes really much with the 26th man. It is, it's tough. You kind of have to. It's not new, quite honestly. I think they've been prepared for this for the last week or so. Second opinions on something like this are quite normal. It's nothing. It's almost standard operating procedure if you're talking about standard operations. And so that was something they were going to do. And he was with Dr. Neil Elatrash, who is pretty much the top guy in the business. And he does Shohei Ohtani's Tommy John. That's who you trust for these things. I know Matt McLain's a Scott Boras client. Boras has a relationship with Neil Elatrash, who oddly was did his fellowship. My brother-in-law did his fellowship with Elatrash, and so they were friends, which is random. But yeah, so that's the guy you want doing it. And I think they were prepared for this, and so it doesn't really change anything. It's just kind of a bummer, but it's also a kind of some certainty there, and what's going on. So that's what's the good thing is they now have the exact diagnosis. The surgery's already done. There's no debating it. It was okay. Yep, this is what we need to do. And honestly, they were saying that that might even be the best case scenario. Just because there will be more certainty in everything after Dr. Elatrash went in to that shoulder and cleaned it up. And remember, it is the left shoulder, and he is right-handed. So,
all right.
Yeah.
All right.
You got a better guess coming up. All right. Who's that? Is that Charlie? Charlie's gonna be better.
No, I got one question from the chat I wanted to get before we let you get out of here. I know you got a busy day today, so appreciate you coming on. But I love this question. This was from our guy, Sir Boy Wonder. He asked, do you think Rhett Lauder will be in Cincinnati by August this season?
It's funny. We had to do these bold predictions. I don't know if that's run yet. And my bold prediction for the season, and this was before it became obvious that McLain was probably not going to be there, but still, I'll stick by it. It's still fun. Was that my bold prediction for the season was that Rhett Lauder would start a playoff game.
Ooh,
I like that.
It's possible. I mean, there are a few players I was more impressed with than Rhett Lauder. I mean, I did not have a lot of experience, so that's part of it. But man, that guy, he's good. He's good. He's no Charlie Condon, but.
That's a good question. Is that your prediction for the Reds at number 2?
I don't know, man. I don't know if he slides to them at number 2.
Yeah,
my guy is crushing. Last I saw, he had like 17 homers and 12 strikeouts, which is just mind-boggling.
It's wild this season, a season where the Reds are coming off 82 wins and still feel like obviously a very competitive team that they're going to be picking number 2. It's like it's really wild. It's going to be fun, though.
How about this? Does anybody want to hear this? If the Reds were picking where they probably should have been picking last year without this silly draft lottery thing, instead of Rhett Lauer, I think is really good, but I wouldn't have minded Wyatt Langford. So, yeah.
Yeah, I saw him hit a ball 900 feet off of poor Buck Farmer a couple weeks ago.
That thing was crushed.
It definitely sounded different. All right, C. Trent. Well, appreciate you coming on. Thanks for all the work you do. Looking forward to following all your coverage, and everyone be sure to support C. Trent and the Athletic this season.
And C. Trent, just be careful out there on the diamond when you're coaching. There's a lot of shoulder injuries in Cincinnati right now, so as you're waving guys around, just be careful. All right.
I wear a cup, so everything that's needed to be protected is protected. So,
more
Thank
breaking
you so
news.
much.
Enjoy Charlie. Bye.
Appreciate you.
All right, C. Trent
Good
Rosecrans
stuff.
is the Athletic. We're going to roll right in. We're going to keep this show rolling along. Charlie Goldsmith. Charlie, we breaking news right as we kind of get going on the show. Not the fun kind of breaking news. I know you were just on top of tweeting it out about Matt McLain. You have any other insight into this other than kind of just the basics?
An important point Trent made. It's not the throwing shoulder that, if you're looking for any sort of silver lining, that's definitely an important piece of this that could help with McLain's recovery timeline. But other than that, like they said, a lot that still needs to be determined and sorted out. But hopefully he plays this season. So, yeah.
So Santiago Espinal, I'm curious your thoughts on this. Do you think he's going to be pretty much the everyday guy for now, and unless he just completely doesn't perform, or do you think that they will play more of Spencer Steer and Jonathan India, some combination at second base?
No one said this officially. My projection would be that it's a lot of Jonathan India at second base, a lot of Spencer Steer in left field. Kind of how I look at it is there's one spot in the lineup every day for Fairchild, Espinal, or Martini, and it'll kind of really depend on who they're facing and who's on the mound for the Reds. So, like, if Graham Ashcraft's on the mound, okay, maybe that's a day you upgrade your defense with Espinal at second base, India first and Strand at DH, or Strand at first and India is your DH. If there's a day you really want all in on offense, you got Benson in center, and maybe Martini's your DH. So, and then India would be at second, kind of going through the pecking order there. So a lot of different options. I would lean towards India by far getting the most starts at second base.
That's great to know. Sorry, I got distracted there a little bit too. I think everybody's got a lot of news going on right now, and I'm just a little all over the place. All right, so you mentioned India, obviously. So India spent a lot of this offseason preparing to play some outfield, it seemed like. If we're being frank, he wasn't the best defender at second base previously. Now that he spent a lot of time in the outfield, what do you think that there's any issues going back to second base now? Has he still been working at second base, but getting work in the outfield during spring training simultaneously? Kind of fill us in on where he's at from a preparation standpoint, getting ready to fill in this role.
So, like the first 2 or 3 days of spring training, India did a lot of work at second base, and then he took basically a month break. Just from what I saw in terms of, I'm there watching every day. Maybe I missed him taking a couple ground balls one day, but my general impression is, India went about a month without playing second base to focus all in, I would say 75% first base, 25% left field. And then that changed after the McLain injury. All right, India, welcome back to second base. And I talked to Jonathan about this. I was like, what was that like? A lot of his teammates called it a whirlwind that India was going through. You're playing second, you're not, you're back. India said something really interesting. He said he expected moving positions to make just his whole game harder, more in his mind, more going on. He said he surprised himself. The opposite happened. He said he feels freed up to be an athlete. He says moving around has helped him at the plate because he just has a more comfortable, fluid, athletic approach right now that he's kind of picked up on because of all the uncertainty and uncomfort. So India overall just seems to be in a really good place. Like I keep using the word refreshed with him. There's just you can see the difference just talking to him, looking at him. he's in a lot different headspace, this kid with the way his role in the team has changed. I was definitely encouraged by his spring training overall.
So, Charlie, Frankie Montas getting the ball tomorrow on opening day. Talking with you and other reporters on Monday, seems to really be kind of embracing this role and appreciating the opportunity to start in Cincinnati.
If Frankie loves the spotlight for sure. He has this big, almost like Orlando Brown presence, or who's another good example? Like Trayvon Blewett is another Cincinnati athlete who has just had this warm, engaging presence, loves the big stage, and is really, really excited for these types of moments and opportunities. These are the type of athletes that, I've seen it in the city. You've seen it in the city. Cincinnati fans really like to rally around. Montas too is, he's been in Oakland. That's Oakland. New York really didn't work for him. And that was a tough experience for him. You can really sense the excitement and the opportunity to have this stage and opportunity to pitch at this level and it not be New York. It's to be a market like Cincinnati that's so connected and tightly knit with its team. He really sees a chance to have a really cool opportunity this season.
You talk about Frankie's leadership abilities. I read your article yesterday about one thing to know about each player on the Reds. And one of the things that stood out personally to me was the leadership qualities of Tyler Stevenson. Now, a lot of us have bashed Tyler Stevenson over the last year or two, specifically with his offensive performance and his defensive inefficiencies. But his leadership, and this is something that I've talked about on this show previously, that having a catcher who is a leader within your pitching staff is a significant benefit overall to the quality of the team. And so could you fill us in on what you saw out of Tyler Stevenson this spring from his leadership abilities, and also maybe if you have any insight into how that parlays into his position within this team?
Yeah, so the story I told in that story was Chase Petty throwing a live BP against Reds hitters, and throwing against the good big league guys. Petty's 20 years old. It didn't go well for Chase. And in the big picture, that's fine. That's baseball. Stevenson wasn't catching. He was kind of on another field doing something else. He hears about it, goes over, catches Petty as he's walking off the field. They sit on a picnic table and talk for like 20 minutes about it. And that's the type of stuff from Tyler Stevenson. Like, we've been talking about his leadership for a couple of years now. It just seems more organic and authentic with where he's at and where the team's at. And here's what I always say about him. Like, we can talk about his framing or his arm to second base or even his offensive approach. There are ups and downs with all of that. But here's what I keep saying. If Stevenson has that type of relationship with the pitching staff, I really think everything else will fall into place. If he has that relationship with the pitching staff, then he'll be getting, even more starts versus Luke Maile than he had last year. Not that that's a bad thing to start Luke Maile, but, Stevenson has the goal of being the franchise catcher. He'll get that added runway. He'll get that added benefit of the doubt. It'll boost his confidence. It'll boost the pitching staff's confidence. And again, the rest will take care of itself. Definitely some very encouraging signs for Tyler this spring, continuing to step up and filling that role.
So, Charlie, I've talked to you a lot this spring, but I think one thing I haven't really asked you about is kind of where the Reds stand with the rest of the NL Central. It's such an interesting division. You look at the NL West, you have the Dodgers projected to win 100 games. You have the Atlanta Braves in the East projected to win 100 games. And then you have the Reds only projected, at least by Pacoda, to win 79 games. But they're only 4 games behind the leader as opposed to these other teams that maybe projected to win in the mid-80s, but they're 15 games behind the leader. How do you kind of, lack of a better word, handicap the NL Central?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking all week about all the terrible spring the Reds had with all the stuff that happened. Well, the Cardinals are down like 7 outfielders right now. And, I'm happy for Michael Ciani. Michael Ciani's now getting a lot of playing time in St. Louis, and he's a guy Cincinnati. He was in the Reds organization forever, and the Reds DFA'd him because they didn't quite view him as a starting outfielder. So, they're in that spot. The Cubs, Tyone's down. Steele just took a ground ball off the knee. They're an older team as well compared to the rest of this mix. Of course, the Cardinals are the oldest of the group. Milwaukee keeps selling, and their pitching staff looks like it's duct tape and glue on the rotation side. I'm sure that bullpen will be just fine because that's what they do. And then Pittsburgh has more questions than anyone, probably even a worse pitching staff than Milwaukee. So the Reds have a path. I mean, I think they have the most upside of this entire division. They also have a lower floor than probably the Cubs and Cardinals' lowest floor. So, that's life as a young team banking on young talent, and it'll kind of come down to player development and, how these guys continue to progress and address their games at the big league level to see how the Reds do this year.
You talked about Milwaukee and their bullpen, and specifically it seems to be their sweet spot for the last number of years. The Reds obviously had a very strong bullpen last year, and they're lined up to have a very strong bullpen this year, but with a lot of different faces, right? So I think the one thing that we can probably pencil in is that Alexis Diaz will be the closer. Although I have personally advocated for maybe a closer by committee based on matchups and some other scenarios. But what are you expecting out of this bullpen this year and some of the new faces that we see out in that bullpen, and how this kind of bullpen will stack up in terms of who's going to be the setup guy? Is it going to be closer by committee? What is your expectations?
Yeah, here's what I've been told. Alexis Diaz in the ninth. After that, 2 through 7, 2 through 8, there's much, much less of a gap than there's historically been with the Reds. I think there's a little bit of, Emilio Pagan and Brent Suter not head and shoulders, but this much above the rest. I don't know how to phrase that. But other than that, they're going to be very matchup specific. So, all right, who do you want? Do you want the guy who can, Emilio Pagan's going to throw a lot of fastballs this year? Is it a hitter who struggles against fastballs with that type of extension? That's Pagan. Is it someone who has swing and miss issues? Lucas Sims. Even between your lefties, is it a guy who, will make a lot of soft contact and will play into Brent Suter's game? Well, there you go. Is it someone who, a more dangerous fastball slider combination can get them off from a left-handed pitcher? You got Justin Wilson. So it's mix and match like that, very specific and detailed areas of these guys' games. Again, there's not a ton of separation between 2 through 8, which is a testament to the depth they've built. Cruz, does a guy struggle against splitters? That might be the best pitch on the whole staff. So they will play those options. Those will be big debates before every game as they shape out their game plan for that day.
All right, Charlie, I got a fun question in the chat. I know you're always a big guy. You enjoy answering some questions in the chat. Our guy Hero asks, what are your plans for the opening day parade? Do you actually kind of cover that in terms of for the paper, or do you just you were at the stadium the whole day?
A shout out to the Enquirer's photo gallery that we're going to have for the parade tomorrow. Always spectacular stuff. I went to the parade a lot as a kid. Love the opening day parade. I'll be on the field, batting practice, all that kind of stuff. It's one of my favorite windows of the year too, because, opening day, everyone comes through, a lot of people are down on the field opening day. So it's a really cool opportunity to maybe see some people you don't always see over the course of the year, or maybe see some, the alumni who will be there, stuff like that. So that ends up being a good, valuable, interesting, fun opportunity on opening day. So I will miss the parade though, to be on the field for batting practice.
I guess there are worse places you could be on opening day, right? All right. Well, let's real quick. I while we have you, since you're talking about opening day, one of the questions I think is going to be the DH role. You already laid out that you think Jonathan India is probably your opening day second baseman. That leaves some open positions. Kind of lay out what you expect from an opening day lineup. We're going to talk about it later in the show, but getting your perspective now is valuable.
Yeah, the big question is, who's your leadoff hitter? I think that was going to be Friedel. Second up was McLain, and now it's kind of a new world in the leadoff spot. Since the injuries happened, they batted Jonathan India the most in the leadoff spot. Personally, I would be very, very interested to see Will Benson in the leadoff spot, specifically because he might be their best hitter against right-handed pitching, because he has that potential, because he is elite plate discipline, because he's a lot of speed. And also, all right, you want Fraley in your middle of the order. That's great. You also want to space out the lefties. So if Fraley's fourth, then you have Benson seventh. That seems to be a pretty low spot for him compared to his relative value. So why not space these guys out at the top? So personally, what I would do, I don't know if they'll do this. They'll have their good reasons to do what they do. How I'd line it up would be Benson, Elly, Steer, Christian Encarnacion Strand, Fraley, Candelario, India, Stevenson, Fairchild. And then really that last spot, that ninth spot, like I mentioned earlier, and the place in the order will change depending who it is. Think of it as one spot for Fairchild, Espinal, and Martini, and this 26-man, whoever it is, for some rotating playing time in that group.
Charlie, I think that Spencer Steer batting behind Elly might be the biggest key to this lineup, just because if you look at Steer's numbers, and especially in the minors, he absolutely has crushed left-handed pitching, and I think can really punish a team if they bring in a left-handed reliever.
That was intentional too, with my lineup. So what I don't want is I don't want teams to bring in the lefty for the top of the order to go, because Elly's better from the left side. So kind of he a little bit counts as a lefty. I don't want them to bring in the lefty to face Benson, Elly, and also be able to get to Fraley. So what do you do, in my opinion? I want my most dangerous hitters in the 3 and the 4 spot against left-handed pitching. I think Jamer's great. Jamer's going to play a big role in this team. I think Christian's more dangerous in that spot. I think Christian strikes more fear in the opposing manager. Oh no, if you want to keep the lefty in for Fraley, you gotta have him go through, Steer, who's consistent, and then Strand, who can change the game with one swing of the bat. I really like that combination with those 2, 3, and 4.
All right, Charlie. Well, really appreciate your time today. I know you got a lot of work to do here with less than 30 hours until opening day. Enjoy the day, my friend.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Charlie.
All right, we're going to keep this moving right along. Got the voice of the Dayton Dragons, Tom Nichols. I'm sorry, I can't remember exactly what it was. You were just elected in the Dayton Hall of Fame, Dayton Sports Hall of Fame,
Dayton Baseball Hall of Fame.
Dayton Baseball Hall of Fame.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. And by the way, while you're still, how lucky are we to have Charlie? He is a hard worker. He is on every story. We're just fortunate to have him. I've actually gone to the trouble of emailing his editor to pass along positive thoughts on how lucky we are to have him covering the Reds and being on the story. So I wanted to get that in.
Yeah, Tom, I shared a little story about Charlie on social media last week.
I saw it.
Yeah, I interviewed Charlie, just a normal spring training interview. He's always kind enough to come on and chat about Red spring training, give us some updates from Arizona. And he had to cut it short because he had to go to press conference with Nick Kroll because the Reds just traded for Santiago Espinal. And I was like, oh, that's fine. Hey, man, that's your job. I get it. And he messages me an hour later, hey, you want me to come back on and record a little bit about Espinal? I'm like, yeah, sure. Yeah, he's just he's a great guy. Well, Tom, I want to get into the Dayton Dragons here in a minute, but I know you're also a guy from Cincinnati. I know you're a Reds fan at heart. What's kind of your overall thoughts about this team going into this season?
It's amazing to me how injuries have become such a factor throughout Major League Baseball, and the Reds have been hit. I think no one would have predicted the losses, and I would include Marte on that, even though it's not an injury, but it's still a big loss. And you can look around baseball and see so many teams impacted similarly. So that's going to go on all year. I mean, that's not going to be a case where, okay, we've got Friedel back in mid-May, and so all of a sudden we're in the clear. So your depth is going to be so important. And right now, fortunately, starting pitching depth looks good because the starting pitchers haven't. Lodolo hopefully is going to be back April the 10th, and you're okay there. You've got Phillips, who I love, and we've talked about him in the past. Phillips has got as good a stuff as anybody. I talked about this with you in the fall. I still feel like the loss of Joe Boyle, although that trade worked out okay because Mole really pitched well late last summer. But Joe Boyle, to me, I know people said, he's only our 18th best prospect or whatever. I said, yeah, but he throws 100 miles an hour. And if he ever harnesses his control, he's going to be an all-star at the major league level. That's not a guy I want to give up, but you had to do it. So I don't criticize them at all for what they did there. They were trying to win a playoff spot. And but Boyle made the Oakland starting rotation and is a guy likely to be in the big leagues if he stays healthy for the next 10 years. I don't know how. I know you've talked about him a little on your show, but the guy I still really am excited about that didn't make the team is Tony Santillan. We had him in Dayton, and he was a starting pitcher for us. He was an absolute star. He was throwing 97, 98 with a good breaking ball at that time. And now Tony is coming back from an injury. And I think you'll see him, and I think he'll have an impact at some point this year. Maybe not just in their bullpen, but in a key position, like a 7th, 8th inning guy. He may jump over some of those middlemen right now that are scheduled to be in that 7th, 8th inning role and move into that once he proves he's healthy, and they can fit him in on the 40-man roster because he's not on the 40-man. I really think that's the reason he didn't make the club. I'm like you guys. I'm waiting to see who that 26th man is going to be. I've looked at some players, and you figure it's probably going to be a right-hand hitter, hopefully an outfielder. If you can find a right-hand hitting outfielder, that's your guy. So we'll see.
Yeah, Tony Santion, Tom, on your point there, I think if the Reds would not have been able to keep him, if they didn't have in his contract they could option him down, I think they would have found a way to keep him on because he was outstanding this spring. Every time he went out, he was dominant. So it's just nice to have a guy like that as some real quality depth. But yeah, we're waiting for that 26th man. If it's Bubba Thompson, like he does provide some value. Like I don't know if people realize he like is almost maybe as fast as Elly. Like they're like right there neck and neck in sprint speed. So you have a massive weapon off your bench, and could certainly use that speed defensively in the center field. Well, Tom, let's talk a little bit about the Dayton Dragons. Last year, you guys had so many guys coming through. It's kind of been, a revolving door there, but Sal Stewart, I believe, is supposed to start the year with you guys. What's kind of your overall thoughts about him? And is there anyone else that you're just really excited to see this year?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Sal Stewart out of the gate. He is, in my opinion, a little bit underrated. Most people would have him in that 7, 8, 9 slot as a Reds top 10 prospect. And the reason is that 1 through 5 are really strong. And you're talking about guys like Phillips and Marte and Chase Petty and maybe Cam Collier. I'm leaving a couple of guys out there, but they've got a really strong top 5, 6, and then Stewart. The thing I think you have to know about Stewart, probably if you've followed some of the scouting reports on him since the day he was drafted, and the day he was drafted, immediately you heard he's going to have to move to first base. So I sort of envisioned this plodding, not very athletic player when he got to us last August, and that wasn't the guy we saw at all. We saw a very good fielding third baseman who had lost some weight and moved around pretty well, and no reason to think that he wouldn't stay at third base for as long as they need him to. Now, when he gets close to the big league level, maybe that's not the position that has an opening, and he would have to move. They're talking about playing him some maybe at second base this year, which no one would have expected at all. He is an outstanding hitter. He reminds me a little bit of a right-handed Jesse Winker at the same age. They both came out of high school in Florida. They're both very, very intelligent players, know the game, give you professional at-bats, stay ahead in the count. Stewart will walk about as much as he'll strike out. He's got power that's going to be evolving. Could be a big year for him. I think he could be a guy that as time goes by, now he's probably not going to put up 25 home runs this year, but eventually he could be that guy. I mean, who would have thought Spencer Steer would have hit as many home runs, or even TJ Friedel last year? I think Friedel finished with 18 maybe? I mean, who would have predicted that? Stewart might be a guy eventually that is a 25 homer guy, but it may not happen as a 20-year-old prospect right now in high A ball. So he's a guy to really watch for this year. He should start with the Dragons, I would expect, and a guy to keep an eye on. Again, really smart player, understands how to change your approach with 2 strikes, which a lot of guys, quite honestly, in this day and age, aren't willing to do. That's why you see so many strikeouts. Guys are taking the same approach 1 and 2 as they are 3 and 1. And it doesn't work. It adds up to a lot of strikeouts. He's not that kind of player. That's why you see as many walks as strikeouts for Stewart. So that's a guy to keep an eye on.
I'll ask you the question from the chat and get your opinion on this. Our friend Reds in 4 asked, Tom, what do we have to do to get just 1 start from Rhett Lauder in Dayton this year?
I recognize that name from social media.
Pretty active.
We don't know yet, the word last year, as I talked to different people after, and to take the fans back a little bit, of course, he was drafted after an unbelievable year at Wake Forest, one of the greatest statistical years in college baseball history, and sort of looked at as a guy who is pretty much ready to go. The player I would maybe compare him to would be hopefully a little better version of a Mike Leake. And you might remember, Mike Leake did not spend one single day in the minor leagues. He started his pro career at the major league level. And I hope that Lauder, well, nothing against Mike Leake, but he was like a number 3, number 4 starter throughout his career. Hopefully Lauder is going to be more. But he's a guy that's very advanced for his age. So we heard last season when he joined the Dragons as an inactive player for the purpose of simply learning the lifestyle of a minor league player, the routine, what you do on the days when you're not pitching. Because when you're a college player, he was, I'm sure, their Friday night starter at Wake Forest. He knew that was the day he was going to pitch every week. In a 5-man rotation, it's not going to be quite that way. He learned the things you do between starts. He learned the life. He learned all those things. But the word was he'll probably start next year back with the Dayton club. And this spring, I've been watching pretty closely, of course, as you might expect I would, to see where he will start. And I keep hearing from different people, Chattanooga. So we'll see. Would love to have him here. If I had any control over it, of course, he would start here, but I don't. So we'll see how it goes. And that'll be I'm getting some audio behind me. So give me a second to go off camera and then get right back to you.
Yeah, I just put him out for a second. Just
okay.
Yeah.
There we go. All right. We're back. All right, Tom. I want to ask you about Jay Allen. He had a tough year last year with injuries. I know it just like a lot of frustrating injuries last year for him. But a guy that I think is kind of been forgotten about, but he's still a very, very talented player.
Right. The reason he probably has been forgotten about to some degree is he did have almost really, I think he would admit, a disastrous year last season, related mostly to injuries. And he kind of showed what happened, how hard it can be. And unfortunately with the Reds, we're going to get this with Friedel and Marte, and that is to try to start sort of while everybody else is at full speed and mid-season form, and you're trying to hustle through what your version of spring training would be and get back out there and have your timing. He just did not ever get his timing at the plate last year. He broke injured his thumb the 3rd game of the season and missed, and he was out until the middle of June, I should say. And when he came back, he wasn't on the field long and had another injury that caused him to miss the rest of the year. Is that background noise? Are you getting a lot of that?
You're okay.
Okay, I can step away again and ask that be discontinued. Okay, so but Jay is, to give you a little scouting report on Jay. Okay, so really, really athletic, was a 3-sport star in high school down in Florida. Supplemental 1st-round pick. I think they got him, if I'm not mistaken, with the pick that they acquired after losing Trevor Bauer as a free agent. They got the extra pick between the 1st and 2nd rounds. It's like the 32nd overall pick, if I remember correctly. Really good defensive outfielder, tremendous base stealer. And the thing that impressed me the most about him, and if you're a metrics analytic person, you kind of maybe aren't as big a fan of the importance of this as I am, having been around teams for 36 years. But he came in at the tail end of 2022 and single-handedly lifted the energy level of our team day to day, game to game, with his style of play. Because when he got on base, he was moving. He had a game where he stole 5 bases in one game to break our club record. Not even Billy Hamilton, who stole 102 bases in 1 year for the Dragons, ever stole 5 in one game. Jay Allen II came in and did that late in the 2022 season. but the energy level he played with and the amount of stress he put on the opposing team every single day, it changed the way our other 29 players played the game. They picked up the same kind of energy level he did. And I thought he had a huge impact on our team. And then last year, he just never got it going. Now, this season, you've got a little change in the outfield picture in that they have a big prospect in Carlos Jorge that's making a move from second base to center field. Last year, it was 2 days a week he would move to center field. I don't know for sure, but my sense is it might be more than that. And Jorge is very highly regarded. So if they decide, for example, he's going to play 4 days a week in center field, that's going to move Jay somewhere else. You got Hector Rodriguez, very good prospect in left field. So Jay may play some right field. Not sure if we'll get Austin Hendrick back for another year. Ethan O'Donnell is a very interesting prospect out of the University of Virginia. Had a really good finish to the 2023 season. He was Reds Minor League Player of the Month in the month of September. And I'm really excited to see him if he comes here. So we got a pretty crowded outfield when you consider Jorge is going to play the outfield with Rodriguez, Allen, Jorge, possibly Hendrick, O'Donnell. So that's 5 guys. So we'll see how it goes. And again, we don't know the rosters until probably a few more days when we get a better idea of how the team's going to look. And then we'll have some of that stuff on our website.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was going to ask about Carlos Jorge, so appreciate you touching on him. The chat has asked us to ask about one more guy specifically. You talk about the depth in the outfield, which certainly seems to be a strength going into the season for the Dragons. I would also say that the pitching staff seems to be a little bit of a strength. Obviously, some things can change depending on who officially gets assigned there and not. But the chat wants to know about Zach Maxwell. What are the expectations for him this year? Do we expect him to stay in Dayton? Do we expect him to be able to move up? What have you seen out of Zach Maxwell, and what do you expect from him this year?
I'll throw a couple of names out at you that I am higher on than most. Maxwell is one of them. Jacob Heatherly is another pitcher that I'm really high on. He's kind of a borderline top 30 guy because he missed, I think, mostly the better part of 4 years due to a combination of injuries and COVID. But he really looked good when we got him last year. I thought he looked like a prospect all the way. Lefty who throws in the mid-90s with a good, excellent breaking ball. If he stays healthy, I mean, the pieces are there. But Maxwell would be another. Braxton Roxby, by the way, another guy I really like. Looked great in the major league games this spring. But Maxwell, similar to, remember, Jonathan Broxton, big physical guy, about 6'6", 6'7", weighs close to 300 pounds, and can throw the ball through a brick wall. I mean, he's going to be consistently 99 to 100, top out maybe 101, perhaps 102, and has a good breaking ball. I mean, he's not a one-pitch guy at all. He's got a very good second pitch. The thing that hurt him with this a little bit last year, if you look at his final numbers, he had, at the end of the season, a couple of really bad innings. And if you're a reliever with less than, say, 30 innings, and a couple of them are innings where you gave up maybe 4 earned runs in an inning, that's going to just drive your ERA up through the roof, and that happened. His ERA was in the 4s at the end of the season with us. He really was a guy, when you watched him pitch, you'd say that's a guy with an ERA in the low 2s. A lot of strikeouts. They tried using him multiple innings, which is a good idea. It didn't go so well, because the second inning, oftentimes, he just wasn't as good. Maybe he'll be better this year if they try to use him multiple innings. Didn't work as well last year. But, he's a power guy. I think his velocity might even tick up a little more. So right now, he's consistently in that 98, 99, 100 range. I mean, he had innings last year where he never dropped below 99. And that's saying something. So that's a guy to watch. I'm very high on him. He should be, in my opinion, clearly a top 30 and maybe even a top 20 prospect. And you don't see a lot of relievers get that kind of love on the prospect list. But he's a special case.
All right, Tom. Well, really appreciate your time. Looking forward to following your coverage. I tell you what, there's some minor league broadcasts that are okay out there. the Dayton Dragons broadcast is elite when Tom's syndicated over the MILB TV feed. So looking forward to that this year, Tom.
Thank you very much. We look forward to having our viewers on April the 5th. And if you guys can make it to a game sometime, let me know. We'll love to have you. Thanks a lot for having me on your program. It's a great show.
Thanks, Tom. All right, we're going to keep it moving right along. We got Mark Sheldon, a busy guy today, as we've had breaking news already this morning, and probably some more news to come, Mark, because the Reds still have to make that call on the 26-man roster. Mark, how you doing?
I'm good. I was in the process of tweeting out today's news, so you caught me right when I was looking at my phone. Sorry about that.
Well, hey, if you need to go sit on a tweet, see Trent already live on the air, sit on a tweet. We our chat, Mark, loved the behind the scenes. They loved watching you guys put out these official tweets. I think that was that might be the highlight of the show. So
well, I'm gonna do it right now, just so you
do
guys.
It. Let's go. This is live. This is live. All right, I'm gonna read it.
Just went out live, so.
Is there more updates, or is this?
No, it's just me catching up.
Okay.
I was writing the story, and then they posted the story at MLB.com, and it just went live a little bit ago, so I'm catching up on that. So between that and changing the cat litter, it's been a busy morning around here.
Well, let's jump right into the news of the day. Obviously, you may have some more insight that maybe we haven't heard. I see your tweet, and obviously the question on everybody's minds right now is, obviously we know now that he had surgery yesterday. The question becomes, how much time will Matt McLain miss? I know that's a bit of an unknown, but based on what you know about the surgery and maybe any other players who have gone through similar procedures, what's your gut tell you about this news that we heard about Matt McLain this morning?
I'm sure the Reds are going to try to be conservative, and I'm sure the doctors will be conservative, and they certainly don't want to overdo it. But from the past experience I've seen with position players and shoulder injuries, even at the non-throwing shoulder, it usually takes longer than expected because shoulders are just not as easy to fix as an elbow or a knee. It's messier. It's less predictable. Joey Votto had a much more major surgery, but it was on his left non-throwing shoulder, and you guys saw what that did to him. His was a much more, sounds like more radical procedure than what McLain's had. Eugenio Suarez fell in a pool shortly before spring training and had what they at the time thought was a minor shoulder surgery. He wasn't the same in that abbreviated 2020 season, and really kind of took him into 2021 to even be somewhat normal. And he had a down year in 2021. So we'll have to wait and see, because he certainly has to swing with, while he doesn't have to throw, he does have to swing, and that's going to affect his swing.
All right, I got to switch gears. We got to talk about some more positive stuff. We're 29 hours from opening day. It's a bummer news about McLain, but still excited about this team. But Mark, I want to ask you about the spring breakout game, because you were actually in the dugout for those games, I believe.
Yeah.
What was kind of your overall takeaway from those two games?
I thought it was interesting only in the sense that these guys don't play together, other than they share a minor league giant locker room. They're on the practice fields together, and they certainly, but for two games, guys at multiple levels from 18 years old to 20 something years old were all paired together in a dugout. They acted like a team. It was kind of fun to see. A lot of the dugout rituals that you see on TV in a big league game, these guys were doing that in the dugout here. I could see the coaches instructing them. If a mistake was made, I saw Dick Schofield take a guy aside and kind of show him something, what he could do better. I was just impressed with the way these guys took the game seriously, both of them, and they wanted to do well. They did well in the first game, not quite so well in the second game, but overall they seemed to enjoy it and get a lot out of it.
Was there any, and this is a tough question, was there any one player that you weren't maybe expecting to kind of have a good day, or just someone that did something that really kind of opened your eyes and that said, okay, that guy, there's definitely something there?
I think the one guy I kind of got to know a little bit was Sal Stewart. I know he knew that what he could do as a hitter, but he clearly wants to take the fielding side of the game very seriously. He started at second base in the first game in his natural third base position in the second game. I got to talk to him. I got to meet his dad, and they were both very happy with the experience. And Stewart was drafted with known for his bat. And hang on one second, I got a text message.
More breaking news.
No, it's not that.
Oh.
Not yet. Sorry.
That's okay.
And I apologize. Just the overall fact that he wants to make defense and be more well-rounded, be part of his game, and we'll see how he does. He's well liked. He's a guy that's probably going to go places, and they feel really good about him.
Yeah, that's awesome. Let's switch topics and focus a little bit more on the major league squad now. I could be misunderstanding, so feel free to correct me. But as the Reds beat reporter for MLB.com, I'm kind of suspecting that you may have a little bit more access to the Reds than maybe the everyday reporter. We talked earlier in the show about this spring and how the team seemed to gel a little bit more naturally, it seemed, as just as a team. What have you seen out of this team compared to previous years, and what does that give you in terms of hope going into the season based on the off the field interactions that you've seen?
Well, first, I'll slightly correct you. I have the same access as the other reporters. I'm a BBWA member. I don't have anything. I don't get special treatment. I don't get special access. I act in accordance to all the beat writer rules and go with that. I don't get to fly in the plane. I don't get to be behind the scenes in the off limits areas. So in that sense, I'm not like the radio guys who are employed by the Reds and have access to more things than I would have access to. So in terms of what I've seen in the clubhouse and on the field and things like that, it was a very upbeat group, even through the injuries that didn't change how they approach it. They got to remember, this team went through a lot of attrition last year. They lost a lot of people over the season. They had a lot of quick turnover. They had a lot of rookies coming in and a few guys going out. So they were able to soldier through that and have a competitive season and go all the way to the last weekend. And I think that's kind of the mentality they're taking right now. The clubhouse brought in a lot of positive people, a lot of good character people, whether it was Suter or Candelario or Pagan. Even Espinal has a great reputation, and I've only barely got to know him, but they all have good reputations of being good people in the clubhouse. And you saw that in Frankie Montas as well. The players gravitated towards these guys. These guys, when they spoke, people listened. And I think having those positive people in the clubhouse is a good thing, especially when you go through adversity. They're more likely to stay together. It's when you have clubhouse cancers or negative people, you might start seeing things fray a little bit.
So, Mark, this opening series, there are a lot of former Reds on the Washington Nationals. Have you heard any chatter about kind of all those guys? I know everyone's, I'm sure, very focused on the start of the season, but I guess maybe a little uncommon just to face so many guys that were a part of this team and recently.
Yeah, I heard Derek Law had a very good spring, and he was, I guess, impressive to their camp. Jesse Winker was a non-roster guy. He earned his way, and I guess Nick Senzel has been playing very well, and I believe he's going to be their regular third baseman at his natural position. And if you remember, David Bell said a few times last year that Nick Senzel might be the best third baseman on the team defensively. So I haven't heard much about exactly how their camps went other than Derek Law. I just saw the tweets and stuff like that. But they lost 91 games last year, and they lost 107 the year before. And I'm guessing that they want to start moving their rebuild to another level like the Reds did last year and maybe start winning some games and have a winning season. So I'm sure they're going to be motivated.
Yeah, one of the things that I know a lot of fans are excited to see this year is the progression of Elly De La Cruz. We heard from a number of reporters that he was working really hard this spring, not only on his ability to bunt, but also his ability from the right-hand side of the plate. Can you just fill us in on what you saw from Elly this spring and, any expectations that you may have for him coming into this year?
What was interesting is just that he was able to hit the ball the other way, both sides, right-handed and left-handed. He was waiting on the ball a little longer. He maybe wasn't committing as quickly. Maybe he had a little bit better pitch recognition. He did take some walks. Of course, he did strike out quite a bit too, so you can't say it's perfect. and he had a little mini slump there. I think like an 0 for 9 or 0 for 10. But that's spring training. But I think the overall takeaway was that he made these adjustments in the offseason, and he lowered his leg kick, improved his patience, and you saw, at least in spring training, some success. It wasn't perfect. Whether, as David Bell also said, the regular season will tell the story whether this actually works or not, and certainly the other teams are going to be making adjustments accordingly. So, but he showed some power hitting the other way. He was able to take some easy hits, and certainly he can still pull because he hit a 470-foot home run as well.
Yeah. One more question before we let you go. We certainly appreciate the time. You mentioned Elly and obviously the work that he's doing this spring, and really that's what spring training is all about, right? I want to touch on the starting rotation specifically, and a lot of these guys are working on adding pitches to their repertoire and certainly working on some other improvements to their game. So we've seen year in and year out about ERAs and spring training not really matter. But what can you tell us about the improvements and the added pitches to the repertoires that you're seeing being there firsthand?
Graham Ashcraft was focused on making his slider better. He said it seemed like it was there for him. I think one start it wasn't. He said he didn't have a feel for it, and he didn't really have a 2-strike pitch to handle it. Said that he paid the price for that, so he had the feel for that pitch more and more as camp went on. Hunter Green has been working on different pitches. I think also a slider. He did not have as much success until maybe his last outing. It's hard to tell, how much it was he working on things and how much of it was he wasn't pitching well. Andrew Abbott wanted to work on his velocity, and he seemed like he had a little bit more strength and was throwing a little harder in the early games of camp than he has in the past. And certainly Frankie Montas is just trying to show that he's healthy, and he had a lot of life on his fastball, but his secondary pitches were looking really good too. So there was a lot to like about what you saw from the pitchers this spring. But, it's still, like you said, it's really hard to tell, not just because of the ERA, but when you're facing a minor league hitter without a plan, sometimes there's no scouting reports, there's no video. They're kind of a lot of guessing going on. And, you may not know a guy that hits sliders real well, and you're trying out your slider and it gets pummeled. So there's a lot of variety and a lot of variables.
All right, Mark, we'll really appreciate you coming on. I know this is a very busy time of the year for you, but nice having you on. Nice meeting you in Arizona.
Yes.
Enjoy opening day, my friend.
Thank you very much. You too, and have a great season.
All right. Take care, Mark. All right. Well, that was a marathon of guests. We got to pay the bills, though, Craig. We got to pay the bills. I got the ad reads. I'll try not to screw this up. So we'll start off with we got a lot of ads because I don't really know. This is Chatterbox Reds. This is going to go on the podcast feed. So I got to do the Chatterbox Reds ads. I got to do the off the bench ads. But you know what? We provide you with a lot of guests today. So you're going to have to suck it up and listen to about 3 minutes of ad reads because we do really appreciate all our sponsors here. A lot of really good companies that support Chatterbox, a small business. And we got to make sure we give them their due. All right. So first off, Chatterbox Reds is always presented by DSC Commodities. DSC is a leader in renewable commodities for biofuel production. They specialize in used cooking oil collection, aggregation, and sales. Visit www.deepsouthcommodities.com for more information. Thanks to our friends at DSC. DSC, a huge reason why we're able to do everything we do at Chatterbox Reds. All right. Then our newest sponsor is the Game Time app. The Game Time app, if you're still looking for tickets for opening day, the Game Time app is the place to get them. If you download the Game Time app today, you can get $20 off your first purchase if you use the promo code Cincy. That is CINCY. That's the official code for Chatterbox Red, Cincy, CINCY. Things that I really love about the Game Time app is they have this really cool seat view where you can see each section. They have the prices laid out very easy for you. You also could toggle at the top of the app. You can toggle all in pricing, so you can see exactly what you're going to pay. You don't have to go click through and put it in the cart and all that kind of stuff. So Game Time app, tickets for opening day. Also, the Reds have 2 more games this weekend. So be sure to check out the Game Time app and use the code Cincy, CINCY. Get $20 off your first purchase. Sponsored by Pawnee Water, premium alkaline water. I had some Pawnee water with me. Funny, I don't know if it's funny or not. Funny story. I had some Pawnee water I brought back with me, and obviously I really enjoy Pawnee water. I haven't been able to get it up in the Cleveland area. Those of you who don't know, I live up here. I had a bottle of Pawnee water that I kept out just in case I ever needed to do a Pawnee ad read. But when I was in Arizona, my parents came up to help my lovely wife, and my mom must have thrown away the empty Pawnee water bottle that was sitting on my desk. So I don't have the actual prop for Pawnee water, but you know them by now. Premium alkaline water, the absolute best. Off the Bench, as always, is presented by UDF. Craig, I know you're not in Cincinnati, but when's peach ice cream season? Because that's what I need. I need some a peach milkshake.
I think we're still like 2 months away. I think it's typically June-ish, but I could be wrong.
All right. So what's Craig? What's your favorite thing? I'm going to put you on the spot. What's your favorite thing to get at UDF?
Yeah, so I'm actually a little bit different. I guess maybe. I'm a real big butter pecan guy, so I actually go a butter pecan shake from UDF typically. Again, been a while since I'm out of town, but definitely that butter pecan hits different, especially in the summer, nice and smooth.
Butter pecan guy, I like it. All right, and then our last sponsor is Encore Technology. Encore offers an entire suite of IT solutions from mobile computing to the desktop data center, supporting centralized and work-from-home computing models. Our solutions are aimed at maximizing our customers' IT investments and improving overall efficiency and productivity. I butchered that. I was supposed to tee you up. I was reading and I didn't think ahead. All right, so Justin Kinner is going to join us here in just a second. But before we get to Justin Kinner, let me tell you about our plans for tomorrow. So we got a lot of plans for tomorrow. Some stuff is still in flux as you might expect with Chatterbox Sports. But 8 to 10 a.m. At some point today, I'm driving down to Cincinnati. Not sure when. I'm going to get down there at some point. 8 to 10 a.m. We're going to be live on the air with Justin Kinner on ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton, live from Great America Ballpark. So I hope you'll tune into that. I think we're trying to get that on YouTube as well. Don't hold me to that, but I think we're going to try to do that. Off the Bench is going to start at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Elliot is going to host, and it's going to be an extended Off the Bench. So it's going to start at 10. It's going to go till whenever the hell we want it to go to. Maybe it's going to go longer than just to noon because I know Elliot has some really good guests, including Zach Fries and my guy Clay Snowden. And then me and Trace are going to be driving up to Chatterbox Studios and joining at some point into the fun there. We're going to try to do some fun content during the game. That's still kind of up in the air, but we'll keep you filled in on that. We'll tell you about that on Off the Bench. And then, of course, the first live post-game show of Chatterbox Reds. We're going to do it in studio. We thought about trying to go down to do it downtown at opening day. But to be completely honest, I got terrible cell phone reception down there. And from our trip across the country, my data is like over the limit. Not over the limit. I get unlimited, but they throttle you until April 4th. So I want to do a good show, a quality show on opening day. So we're going to do it in studio. I'm giving up going to opening day just for you folks. So make sure you tune in live in the ninth inning as always for our first Chatterbox Reds. Craig.
I'm jealous. I said it yesterday to you, but I grew up in Cincinnati. I spent the first 20 something years of my life in Cincinnati, and I never made it to opening day. So I'm a little bit ashamed to admit that, but I'm certainly jealous of you to get to go down there and experience it for a little bit, even if it's just in the morning. All the photos, all the videos we always see are awesome. I'll certainly be tuning in here from Memphis, where I live, for the parade and for the actual game, and obviously have the Chatterbox live stream up on YouTube as well. So I'm excited. I'm excited for you guys. Excited for this partnership between you all and ESPN Dayton. that will be launching soon, and we'll see if Justin Kinner's ready for us yet. Yeah, we get a thumbs up, so that must mean he's figured out the audio.
My God, I felt like I was 80 there for a second. I couldn't figure out the camera. I was like ready to call my grandpa to see if he could help me with the technology. Thank you guys for having me. My apologies for the delay, but hey, we're off and rolling. Solutions, not problems. So there you go.
No, you're good. We were a little. I was supposed to do the ad reads before Mark Sheldon, and I knew that he was on a time crunch. So I was like, I better push them to after. So it was good. I had a lot to get through and survived it. I was nervous about all those ad reads and not screwing them up. You know, because you have proud sponsors. You want to showcase them. They support what we do here. They keep the lights on, the basement lights for me here. But Justin, opening day. Cincinnati, it's the best, right?
Yes, and I heard you guys talking about it. So me and Trace have been kind of panicking behind the scenes. Nick didn't know about this, but Nick, there was a slight chance that your credential almost didn't get approved. I think we're good. I think everything's good to go. But yeah, so I was like, oh man, he's so excited. I'm gonna have to tell him bad news. But as you were doing that, I checked my email and I got the email from MLB.com that they got the application and everything's good to go. So, hey, you're going to opening day tomorrow now too. But, me and Trace have been panicking behind the scenes for a little bit, to be honest with you.
Let's go.
But, yeah, opening day. So, Craig, I heard you say you have never been. Last year was the first year that I got to go to opening day, which is really cool. So we got to do our show, the Kenner and Kev show. We did that live from opening day last year. And it was so cool because that was my first opening day experience. So I told my bosses, hey, we're doing the show in the morning and then I'm done for the day. So we got tickets and, I had a couple beverages throughout the day and had a blast. And what's wild is as fun as that was for a season that they were anticipated to lose 100 plus games, right? Like there's some, where are you going to go? All that fun stuff. That was just the circulating theme of the season. 100 plus losses. I mean, Jonathan India, Tyler Stevenson, and maybe hopefully Joey Votto would have come back. That was kind of the only hope that the season had as far as keeping an eye on some of the prospects. So if that was my first opening day experience last year with a season that there was no buzz for other than people just wanting to get buzzed on opening day, I can't imagine what tomorrow's going to be like, Nick and Craig. So I'm pretty jacked to get there to do the show, yes, but just to spend the day in Cincinnati for what is supposed to be the first anticipated season in quite some time.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I think if you would have asked us 3 months ago and we were talking about opening day, I think the vibes were so high on this team and the expectations were so high. Some people have allowed some injuries and other things to bog them down a little bit. But I think ultimately, when you look at the roster from top to bottom, this team is in a much better position today than it was last year at this time, and ultimately has a lot of upside. So we're all excited. I hope the rest of the city is excited, and I'm looking forward to the vibes being immaculate tomorrow for you all. Let's talk about outside of the game. What's your favorite part of opening day? Obviously, last year was your first time actually being at the game and experiencing it, but outside of actually the game itself, what's your favorite part about it?
My favorite part, well, I mean, I don't want to repeat what I guess it's just the fandom of the Cincinnati Reds, because right now with, everyone has this hot take about the popularity of baseball. And yes, the popularity of baseball could be pretty regionalized, but the Reds have not done a great job over the last couple of decades of really trying to keep and retain Reds fans, right? And that's not a shot at the Reds. It's just winning is the ultimate cure to everything, right? There hasn't, outside of, a couple good seasons here and there. There was that nice stretch in the early 2010s. You have your Joey Votto, you go and you get, the big Ken Griffey Jr. signing early in the 2000s, but there really hasn't been a lot to kind of retain Reds fans. So many of the older Reds fans that I know, they love, referencing back to the Big Red Machine, and they love referencing that 90s World Series. And, so many older Reds fans have a passion for it because there was championships associated with it and a dynasty associated with it that has one of the best nicknames in all of baseball dynasties in the Big Red Machine. When I think about my run, I was technically, I'm 33 or 34. I don't even know how the hell old I am. 34 years old. I was technically born when the Reds won a World Series in 90, but I don't really count that because I was maybe not even one at that time. The Reds, for my lifetime, haven't really provided me with a lot of, oh my gosh, I'm a proud Reds fan. I can't wait to pass that on to my children someday, like the way my, older generation has been able to do. So to answer your question, the fact that you could still go to opening day and just see the passion that still, you even have younger fans like us that are still holding on to what baseball means to that city. It's just the passion of Reds fans. I talked to a lot of friends who are fans of other teams that go to their opening day, and it's exciting, it's fun, but it doesn't even come close to matching the intensity and the passion that we as Reds fans have for this organization.
Yeah, Justin, I last year was the first year I had ever gone to opening day at Great American Ballpark. So I was kind of with you as well. I've always just I'm not going to spend the money. I'll go to the second and third and fourth and fifth game for the same price. But I was just amazed at how many people were downtown.
Yes,
coming off a 100-loss season. I mean, whether it's I know it's more about the holiday than the party. And I said this several times this offseason. I do feel like last year in many opening days, it's about the party and the holiday. But I do feel like this year, it is a little bit more about the actual team. There's actual real buzz and excitement about going to watch Elly De La Cruz and Spencer Steer and Jonathan India and, all these players that have really taken off. Justin, I want to ask you, though, if there's one key to this season for the Reds, what do you think that is?
Well, again, and first of all, you had Mark Sheldon on. I like how you pivoted away from hey, I know the Matt McLain news is kind of a real kick in the man parts, but let's focus on the positive. Well, Nick, our history, I mean, you've always butted heads in the past because you're the uber positive one, and I'm the, the sky's always falling. Well, I may be learning a little from you. I put out on our station Facebook page a little bit ago, I just started listing, Elly De La Cruz, Jonathan India, Tyler Stevenson, Spencer Steer, Christian Encarnacion Strand, obviously Diaz and Hunter Green and Frankie Montas, and just keep going down the list. The reason there was a buzz for this upcoming season was because the plethora of talent on this roster. So everyone's focusing on Matt McLain and obviously Friedel, which that's a big deal. Don't get me wrong. And that's going to be a big pivot that the organization's going to have to figure out a way to move without those two for quite some time. But I just think there's way too much depth for everyone to look up and say the sky is falling. So I think it's a lazy answer on my part, but health is obviously going to be key. But depth is also their way out. Last year, if you would have told me that, hey, if Jonathan India gets hurt, Tyler Stevenson gets hurt, 100-loss season that was anticipated could be a 120-loss season if one of those two goes down. Now we're losing two of our best players, and here we are still being able to ring off a string of big-time names and contributors, and I disrespected Will Benson. I left him off that list. I met that guy at Reds Fest, and he has a new huge fan in me. I tell you what, I'm not going to let those two injuries really derail my optimism heading into this season because there's just too many stars on this. And by the way, Elly De La Cruz is one of the biggest stars in baseball 1 year in. I just think there's way too much positive things happening. But Nick, to answer your question, obviously, it's a lazy answer, but health. I think health is going to be the big thing. But I do think that they can overcome it as long as, hopefully pitching stays healthy. As long as they have the depth at pitching, obviously that's being tested a little bit. I want to see how Nick Lodolo comes back. But pitching and obviously health, I think, is going to be the key to everything. Because I think what's getting overlooked, too, that bullpen was one of the best in baseball last year. And Nick, I don't know about you. I don't think the bullpen gets talked about enough, even all offseason long. It's all about the position players, and rightfully so. But that bullpen's going to be key, and health is going to be key as far as that when it's all said and done.
Justin, obviously you talked about you haven't made it down to opening day, but you're there in Dayton. We had Tom Nichols on the show from the Dayton Dragons. I'm making an incorrect assumption, but I assume that you have maybe a more of an opportunity than myself or maybe Nick to really check out the Dragons atmosphere, and they obviously do a great job from a game day experience. The excitement around opening day is a lot more than just the game and the experience. Similar with the Dragons, can you talk about what the Dragons are able to do on game day and the excitement that they built with fans even around a single A club or a high A club that they've got a roster that rotates out regularly, and but they put on a great show, don't they?
Oh, no doubt. And Tom, I was able to catch some of Tom's interview. I know he's being put into the Dayton Baseball Hall of Fame here. He was just made aware of that this week. That was a pretty cool video, getting to see his reaction. He's very passionate about what he does, and he's a very valuable piece to the Dragons as far as just being that vocal, mouthpiece for them, and he does a very good job. But the Dragons, what I love about the Dragons is the way that, not just the way the fans embrace it, but the city has embraced it too. I mean, if you look, I remember when I moved here a little over 10 plus years ago, there wasn't a whole lot going on around the Dragon Stadium. And right now there's a bunch of hotels going up. There's all these new, sports bars and restaurants. And there's just the city life around that ballpark has really picked up. And I think that's been really key, and obviously keeping and sustaining the popularity of that ball club going. It keeps traffic downtown. It keeps foot traffic down there around the ballpark as well. And there's just an atmosphere. So when you do go to the game, you have stuff to do afterwards as well, or you can go hit one of those bars up before you go to the game. It's kind of really cool because you don't get that with a lot of minor league teams. It's just sometimes a ballpark out in the middle of nowhere or kind of off to the side. Day-Air Ballpark's right downtown, and the city has embraced it with a lot of the new developments downtown, so I think that's pretty cool. But as far as the baseball aspect goes, I don't know if you ever do get a chance and reach out to Tom and he'll give you a tour of the ballpark. I mean, it's almost like a little mini museum to the history of the Dragons as he's giving you a tour around. I mean, every big name you could think of, you forget the fact that they flew in Magic Johnson one time as a partial owner back in the day. Like Magic Johnson's flown in to, attend a Dragons game in the past. I mean, big names have attended Dragons games to come in for ceremonial events and everything like that. So, and then the names. I mean, what's really cool and unique about this rebuild for the Reds is that they've been able to do it through their, through the development of their farm system and obviously through the draft. And that's kind of a replication of what they were able to do in the early 2010s. That's what made that team so special is we watched those guys come up through the system. That's what makes this team so fun is, yes, you can go out and buy a lot of pieces, and that's what a lot of fans want. But I think that there is kind of a cool aspect of we get to watch them here in Dayton before they go and put on that Reds jersey. You almost feel connected with them a bit, and the same thing with the Bats and every other farm system team throughout. So I just think the Dragons, you look at the fact that they've had so many big names that have been all-stars for the Reds. They have come through Dayton at some point, and the fans appreciate that, and that's what makes this team so fun from that perspective.
I need to get down to a Dayton Dragons game in Dayton. I've been to about 15 Dayton Dragons games against the Lake County Captains because that's about 20 minutes for me. But I need to get to the actual ballpark there. I got to check that out. Justin, you twice this offseason got to do some interviews with some Reds players. I was thankful enough to get to do the first one with you down at Reds Fest, and then you also did one at Right Pat. What was your overall thoughts from that day? How was that experience? And I believe you also got to interview Frankie Montas, if I'm correct.
Trace got to jump in on all of that. Trace, and by the way, I mean, look, you guys do a fantastic job. Obviously, that's one reason why we're jumping in this partnership together. But yes, Trace and I got to do the Reds Caravan, which was at the the Air Force Museum here in Dayton, which was pretty cool. The unique thing about that, you just had Mark Sheldon on. Mark Sheldon and I were talking about this when we were just kind of standing there. The bus was a little late arriving. Okay, and when I say late, I mean late. Like they were late arriving to the Caravan. And there were over 500 fans that had been sitting there for over an hour. So those 500 fans, and I'd say maybe a little more, they had gotten there probably most of them an hour before the bus was supposed to arrive. And usually you get a little antsy and frustrated when the bus is – no, they didn't care. The excitement and the buzz was there. That's one of my biggest takeaways from the Caravan is just the fact that, you could just see the passion in the fans. But, and it was a pretty fun lineup. Obviously, David Bell came in. David Bell for the first time, and I have been a David Bell critic for many, many years. I will say that I'm very glad that the Reds have allowed him to remain the manager through the rebuild. And you guys can answer this. Can you think of any other – in any sport where a manager or coach is – obviously leading a team, they enter a rebuild and they're still able to be there on the other side? I can't think of one. David Bell might be one of the first. And I'm not saying there hasn't been one. Maybe I'm missing an obvious one. I appreciate what the Reds did with him, but this is the most relaxed I've seen David Bell. As far as interviews are concerned, he's loose. I know, Nick, you got a chance to interview him as well when we were at Reds Fest. But yeah, it's just the play. We talk about the buzz and excitement for the fans and us media. You could just tell there's a different type of energy from the players and even the manager, David Bell, and even the front office. I know Phil was a lot more loose at Reds Fest. I mean, he wasn't very comfortable last year at Reds Fest. He was a little bit more loose this year, just comfortable. And I think everyone just feels really good about the direction that the organization's going in as far as that's concerned. We had Ben Verlander on too. And that's how you could tell, we talk about the popularity of baseball and how regionalized it is, but the Reds have gotten so much more national coverage. And I hate saying it like that because it sounds like we're talking about like a college basketball team. Like, for us here in Dayton, the Flyers are Wright State. We get excited if ESPN picks up something on them. Like, they're getting that national coverage. Well, sometimes how it feels with the Reds at times. So to have Ben Verlander be a big-time spokesperson for the Reds this year and be very outspoken about how optimistic he is about them, that was a fun interview as well. And he's very high up on this team, and he loves their pitching. So, yeah, there's definitely a different buzz, no doubt.
Yeah, Nick went out to Arizona around the same time that Ben Verlander made his sleeper pick of the Reds to be competing this year. And everything since then has been downhill. So whether it's Nick jinxing the team or Ben Verlander, I'm not sure which one. I like to blame Nick personally, but we'll see. It's interesting you bring up David Bell and his relaxed approach. I mean, if nothing else, the one thing that people have praised David Bell for over his tenure has been the culture that he's building, right? We see it on the other side with the other Cincinnati team with the Bengals and Zach Taylor and the value that culture has brought in terms of being able to go out and get other guys to come in and support the team, and the expectations are now higher because of it. Do you think that the word is getting around the league about David Bell and the way that he manages this team and contributes to the culture that has allowed them to go out and bring in free agents like Jamer Candelario and others?
I think the word's getting around the league, but I think a lot of it is because the players on that roster love him so much too. Back when I was a big, heavy critic of David Bell, when they were losing a lot, the one thing that I had going against me is that there was no players coming out speaking up against David Bell, and the one thing too that I had to make a shift in my mindset on how I'm covering baseball is David Bell. It's not like it's a David Bell approach. It was a Major League Baseball approach, which is why at times baseball drives me nuts, is because it became so robotic as far as decision making is. It's almost like there's a manual. When this happens, you push this button. When this happens, you hit reset here. Like, I just like the guts, using your guts or whatever. But obviously there's a balance that has to come to play here. But the one thing that makes David Bell so great is that every player loves playing for him, and you can tell he loves his players. Sometimes you don't always get that vibe from managers, and sometimes you don't get the vibe that the players love playing for a particular manager. They're just out there collecting the check and playing the game that they love, and off they go. There is an actual bond and camaraderie between his players and him, and I think that's what makes the Reds interesting when free agency hits, is because there's a lot of players who are like, yeah, I've heard good things about the Reds organization and David Bell at this point. So I do think he's become a good selling point when it's all said and done.
All right, Justin. Well, really appreciate you coming on, battling technology with us as well. I'm looking forward to hanging out with you in a few hours. It's going to creep up on us pretty quick here.
It's going to be cold. It's going to be cold.
Is it going to be cold?
In the morning. It'll be high at 55, I think, in Cincy tomorrow, and mostly sunny. But in the morning, last year, I dressed for what the temperature was supposed to be later in the day, but I didn't come prepared for what it was in the morning. So, it was a little brutal in the morning. But again, when you're doing the show, Great American with the ballpark behind you on opening day, you can just feel the energy in the city, man. There's nothing like it, so I'm pretty excited. But I'm sorry, I didn't be able to come on the show and break any news like and all that. By the way, I'm glad that the Reds put that out before C-Trent. C-Trent has me blocked, so I can't really see anything. I don't remember what it was. It had something to do. I was on a roll one day because I think him and he blocked me. I don't even know what I did, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm not saying I'm always innocent, but I'm sure I did something. But I can't see any tweets.
Real quick before we let you go, Justin, for those viewers that are gonna be at the parade tomorrow and around the stadium, are you guys going to be set up somewhere where they can come and watch the show in the morning? Are you going to be in front of the stadium? Are you inside on the concourse? Where are you guys going to be set up at?
So we're not going to be we'll be there early in the morning. The show will be live from 8 to 10. So we'll be live from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. and it'll be on the concourse before fans are let in. It's just, right now, a partnership with the Reds radio network, just to kind of be to start the day, just to signal that it's opening day and just kind of get the buzz and excitement out there, and just let people know, kind of update them on everything that's kind of going on around the ballpark as far as that's concerned. Keep in mind, too, we talked about with the Reds and the fans and all that, but the city of Cincinnati, that little area downtown, I mean, when they block that door of downtown where everything's just blocked off, no cars coming through. Nick, you talked about it, shoulder-to-shoulder fans. I mean, that's just a fun area. I mean, they need to do more stuff like that for Bengals and stuff like that too. But the city of Cincinnati has become a fun sports city when it's all said and done, just because of the downtown vibe. So.
And Justin, you're doing a radio show today, 3 to 5?
Yes, the Kenner and Kev show here in Dayton, 1410 Wing AM. You can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on our ESPN Dayton YouTube channel. And then starting Monday, that's when everything, we know the partnership really kind of, takes off with Chatterbox. So we're really excited about that. I know that Trace in his show with Chatterbox from noon to 3, and then us from 3 to 5, and just to have some more local programming here in Dayton is going to be exciting. And then our show going to be on your guys' network as well. So we're pretty excited about that, and especially right as baseball season's underway. I think that's a good time to kick everything off.
All right, well, looking forward to it. Thanks a lot, Justin. Have a good day, brother.
Appreciate you guys. Craig, nice meeting you. You guys take care.
Yeah. Likewise. All right, Nick, you're going to be, not only is it going to be chilly out, but you're going to be in on the concourse in the shade. So you better bundle up, my friend.
Yeah, I guess it's the dad thing. I'm much better at planning for weather now because I mean, especially like up here in I live about a mile from Lake Erie. I mean, it's insane. Like I'll put the kids on the bus in the morning and it's like 32 degrees. Well, I'll go pick them up and it's 65. So you have to really strategically plan. So I was on top of that when I was putting some clothes out last night, but yeah, looking forward to that. I mean, just wild to be at inside Great America Ball before the gates open on opening day. If they let me in, we'll see. We'll see how that works.
Excited.
All right.
For you guys.
Well, we got about 15 minutes left, man. This when you have that many guests, it really does fly by. I had a good friend of mine. I'm not gonna say by name, but a good friend reached out to me and said, "Hey, Nick, you know what? I love the Reds, but I haven't been able to keep up on spring training. I don't know what the hell's going on with this team. I want to get really invested before opening day. Can you give me," his words, "a Reds fan guide for dummies?" So I said, you know what? I'm going to do it at the end of the show. I think that a lot of times doing this podcast and these live shows, I do it every day and I see the people in the chat. And I know a lot of the people in the chat like have followed along and know everything that's going on. But I think there's I forget about a lot of people that, just don't follow the Reds as closely as I do. And probably they're smarter for it. But I want to kind of help those people understand what's going on with the Reds as we get closer to opening day. So I brought some graphics with me, and me and Craig are going to kind of go through this and kind of update you and give you an idea of exactly where things are at here on opening day. So here's the offseason storylines. First off, the big one, Reds declined Joey Votto's $20 million contract. He signed a minor league deal with the Blue Jays. He will be starting the year in AAA. So this will be the first year without Joey Votto, who I believe is the greatest Reds offensive player of all time. Reds signed first baseman, third baseman Jeimer Candelario to a 3-year, $45 million deal. The Reds did this a lot earlier in the offseason than some of the other deals. They really liked Candelario. They liked his veteran leadership. So he'll be a big piece. One of the bigger free agent signings the Reds have ever made. And it might not be a lot of money, but it is one of the larger ones they've ever done. Reds signed 3 pitchers, Frankie Montas, Nick Martinez, and Emilio Pagan. More on them in a minute. The big one, Jonathan India will not be a full-time second baseman, although things might be shifting with the Matt McLain injury. He's been playing in left field, first base, and DH in spring training. So it'll be interesting to see how he is used. The NL Central storylines, the Milwaukee Brewers, they traded away their ace, their former Cy Young winner Corbin Burns, but they did add Rhys Hoskins and Gary Sanchez, among others. Devin Williams, their star closer, he's going to be out about 3 months on the IL. The Cubs added Shoto Imagawa and Michael Busch. They lost Marcus Stroman. They fired David Ross and hired Craig Counsell in one of the wildest managerial changes I've ever seen. So interesting to the Cubs. Cubs also come into the season the healthiest by far of any of the NL Central teams. Pirates, they added Aroldis Chapman, Martin Perez, and Michael A. Taylor, also Rowdy Tellez and several others. Pirates probably the most active team. They didn't sign a lot of guys to big contracts, but they did sign a lot of actual major league players this offseason. So they added, I think, probably more MLB players than anyone else. And then O'Neal Cruz returns. I know a lot of people like to downplay him, but I think he's got the potential to be one of the best players in the sport. And I think he's going to really change. Of course, he got hurt on a pitch. Was it Fernando Cruz that threw it? I don't know. Someone on the Reds hit him last year, broke his wrist, and he missed almost the entire year. But he's going to be a huge addition for them. And then the St. Louis Cardinals, they traded away Tyler O'Neill. They desperately needed pitching. They got some pitching. They added Sonny Gray, Kyle Gibson, Lance Lynn, and Middleton. Sonny Gray will be starting the year on the IL. So, Craig, looking through kind of the offseason storylines, what are some of the things that kind of stand out to you? And did I miss anything?
Well, the biggest thing that stands out to me is obviously the Reds' approach to depth, right? We're going to talk about it in a little bit. The starting lineup this year is at least in my opinion, significantly better than the starting lineup last year, and that's thanks to some of the additions that they've made. Now, obviously, some injuries are going to derail a little bit of that, but that's not something that we can really control. Obviously, as a fellow Joey Votto lover, the declining of his option or of his contract certainly still stings a little bit, but then he went out and hurt his ankle on the first game that he played with the Blue Jays, and I mean, for lack of a better term, gave me a little bit of solace to believe that maybe he just doesn't have it anymore. I guess only time will tell. Look, I think one of the things that is going to be interesting to follow this year, and you touched on it earlier, is that the other divisions, especially in the NL, seem to be pretty written in stone already in terms of expectations. The NL Central race this year is really unknown. I think depending on who you talk to at any given time, you'll get probably 20 different potential outcomes in terms of the way that this division stacks up top to bottom by the end. You know, a lot of people are kind of writing off Milwaukee, but ultimately, from my perspective, like they just have a history of being able to replenish. And so I struggle to really write them off. Devin Williams being out for 3 months is going to be a huge hindrance to them, though. Losing your closer for 3 months to start the season will be difficult. And then, yeah, just seeing what the Pirates are able to do is going to be a big storyline. I know a lot of people are high on them, but there's also a lot of people who are still low on them. And so that's really the storyline that I'm most intrigued to watch, is where do the Pirates go this year? You know, O'Neal Cruz, many compare similarly to Elly De La Cruz, especially in terms of their stature and their playing style. And, you know, if he can bring the same type of energy to Pittsburgh that Elly brought to Cincinnati last year, then you really should watch out for the Pirates. They've got an opportunity to be competitive this year at the very least.
All right, kind of going through the Reds injury news as we get ready for the start of the season. Nick Lodolo is supposed to be ready on April 10th. He's going to throw make two minor league starts to start the season. But everything, we knock on wood, has projected well for him. Looks like he's going to be ready. And he's going to bump someone out of the rotation that we'll talk about in a minute. Sam Moll, Alex Young, and Ian Jabot all starting the year on the IL. Moll and Jabot are throwing and I think are close. I think it's just more of they're just not ready for opening day. I don't see them, either one of those injuries is anything that's going to be a hindrance to them very long term, and I expect them to join the Reds bullpen fairly soon. TJ Friedl, fortunately, fractured his wrist right at the end of spring training. One of the more brutal injuries that we'll kind of talk about when we talk about the lineup here in a second. He's expected to miss about 6 to 8 weeks. We just got the update about an hour ago about Matt McLain. No timetable for his return is still, I guess, the thing, but he had surgery officially. At this point, it kind of feels like whatever Matt McLain gives you this year is almost a bonus. I mean, I think he will play at some point this year, but I don't think at this point you're really banking on him. And Craig, correct me if I'm wrong, on what he can give this year. And then Brandon Williamson, he's starting the year on the IL. Doesn't sound like he's going to be out too long. Didn't sound like he also was going to make the opening day rotation, but he should be able to be a contributor if the Reds need him in the near future. Any other thoughts on kind of the injuries here, Craig?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Matt McLain coming back this year, even though the Reds claim that they expect him back, I think anything that you can get out of him is just going to be icing on the cake at this point. I don't think that you can really go into the season expecting to see him, which is unfortunate for sure. TJ Friedl, obviously expected to be on the shorter end of that 6 to 8 weeks, but we don't know exactly what that target's going to look like. The big thing for me as we go into the season, and as Nick Lodolo and Brandon Williamson become healthy, is what the Reds are going to do with the rotation. Last year, obviously, the Reds had to lean on a lot of young guys who didn't have major league experience, I should say, to come in and pitch games. This year, they're going to have the depth, hopefully, barring more injuries, to really kind of manipulate the starting rotation a little bit more at their leisure. Guys like Nick Martinez have a little bit of flexibility to potentially pitch out of the bullpen if needed. If everybody comes out and they're pitching lights out, and then you get Nick Lodolo back and Brandon Williamson healthy, you're really going to have to figure out what to do there. And that's going to be the biggest challenge, I think, for David Bell here in the first month or two of the season, is really figuring out what that rotation is going to look like once Nick Lodolo and Brandon Williamson are healthy. Because Brandon Williamson certainly looked good enough this spring to earn a roster spot. But with the injury, obviously made that decision a little bit easier. And Nick Lodolo, we both agree that when he's healthy, has the opportunity to really be a front of the rotation kind of guy. So David Bell's going to have some challenges on his hands, and how he handles that could really lay out the success of the Reds over the course of the season.
All right, here's what I'm projecting as the Reds opening day lineup. We talked earlier with Charlie Goldsmith, and he thinks Santiago Espinal is not going to play as much as maybe I do. That's maybe an interesting thing to see. Hard to really predict the lineup. It's definitely not as fluid as a lot of other years going into the season. I think Will Benson is going to be leading off just based on the last couple spring training lineups against right-handed pitching. I think Elly De La Cruz and Will Benson will also be playing center field. I think most of the time when he starts, as long as Stuart Fairchild's not in the lineup, with TJ Friedel out, so kind of the cause and effect there. Elly De La Cruz, shortstop, it looks like he's pretty much penciled into the number 2 hole. Spencer Steer looks like he's pretty much penciled in the number 3 hole, playing left field. I think more than anything, probably some DH as well, but I think he's probably just going to be left field and DH. I know they can play him at second base, they can play him at first base. I don't anticipate he'll be doing much more other than those two. Jake Fraley clean up and right field. Jamer Candelario batting 5th, playing third base. Christian Encarnacion Strand batting 6th, playing first base. Jonathan India 7th. I think he'll probably DH on opening day. That's my guess. But he's going to play some first base, some second base, and maybe some outfield as well. Tyler Stevenson 8th, catching. Luke Mailey had a great spring, and I think is going to challenge Tyler Stevenson in terms of playing time. But I still think Tyler Stevenson is definitely catcher number 1, at least for now. And then I think the Reds will go with Santiago Espinal at second base on opening day. I think the last thing you want is errors at second base. I think you're going to go with the sure-handed guy. But one guy that we didn't talk about is, and probably one of the biggest storylines offseason, is Noelvi Marte, suspended for the first 80 games of the season, and he's ineligible for the postseason. And that just after the Matt McLain injury made that suspension even more of a big deal for the Reds. But one thing that we could see, especially if Matt McLain is not back until later in the year at best, is Jamer Candelario could slide over to second base. I know that was part of the thought behind signing him, and Noelvi Marte slides into third base. And I think at that point, you still have a really, really good infield with those guys. But it's going to probably a lot's going to depend on how well does Santiago Espinal play. If Jonathan India does get reps at second base, is he able to play adequate defense? I don't think he did last year. I'm excited about his bat though. Craig, what's kind of your overall thoughts about the lineup? And one other quick point. I think Nick Martini is going to play a lot more against right-handed pitching than people think. I think that he's a guy you also got to throw into this mix as well. But Craig, any other thoughts on this lineup?
Well, my thought, and everybody's going to have a different opinion on this, but when I look at this lineup, I don't see any breaks for the opposing pitchers 1 through 8, really. I think every single person in this lineup right now has an extremely high upside. There's certainly going to be some guys who go through some cold streaks, and that'll have to be addressed in the moment. But having guys like Stuart Fairchild and Nick Martini and Luke Mailey to be able to come off the bench is certainly an upgrade over last year. I don't remember. I apologize who mentioned in the chat last year, but just for comparison, I want to run through last year's starting lineup on opening day, just for fun, to avoid some French. So opening day starting lineup last year, India was your second baseman. Friedel was in center field. Jake Fraley was your DH. Tyler Stevenson batted cleanup as your catcher. Jason Vossler was your number 5 hitter. Shout out Jason Vossler. Will Myers was in the 6 hole. Spencer Steer at 7. Will Benson then at 8. And Jose Barrero came in the 9 hole playing shortstop. Fairchild was the only player to come off the bench in that game. I don't recall exactly who else was on the bench to start the year, but long story short, when I look at the lineup this year versus that year, I see obvious holes with Vossler, Myers, and Barrero that, as an opposing pitcher, you've got a quote unquote break right now. Vossler and Myers both picked up hits. Barrero did not, but realistically, as an opposing pitcher, you're not really threatened by those guys, especially to start the season. Versus now, look at this season's lineup. You've got guys like Will Benson, who has shown he can mash, Elly De La Cruz, who creates all kinds of havoc when he gets on base. So not only are you worried about hitting, but you're worried about potentially putting him on base with a walk. Spencer Steer batting behind him means that hopefully Elly De La Cruz sees a lot more strikes to be able to attack. One of the struggles he had last year was swings at pitches outside of the zone. So if he can get a lot more strikes to attack, he'll have a much better year. And then obviously Fraley Candelario, CES has shown that he can absolutely mash. India, when healthy and when right, has shown extreme ability to be successful. Tyler Stevenson started off the spring really cold, but then really heated up at the end. And if he can keep that going, will be a lot of value. And then depending on what that 9-hole looks like, whether it's Espinal, who's shown not necessarily a ton of talent at the plate, but at least can get on base, or Fairchild, who had an amazing spring, or Martini, who showed a lot of clutch ability last year. So from me personally, I look at that and I'm extremely encouraged at the lineup. And as an opposing pitcher, I don't think I'm excited to go against that on opening day. Sorry, Josiah Gray.
And correction, Nick Martini, not Nick Martinez. Hopefully Nick.
Oh, my fault.
No. I said that.
Oh,
earlier.
okay.
I hopefully Nick Martinez is not playing in the field. Nick Martini is the guy that I think will play a lot more against right-handed pitching than people think. That's kind of my prediction. All right, the Reds starting rotation. Frankie Montas will get the ball on opening day. Hunter Green will start game 3. Nick Martinez starting game 3. Andrew Abbott game 4, and Graham Ashcraft will round out the rotation. You probably by now know about Montas. Got Cy Young votes a few years ago with the Oakland A's, but has battled injuries, only threw an inning last year. A lot of upside, but a lot of questions with him. A great pitcher to have, but what will he give you in this year? We'll have to wait and see. Hunter Green, I think a guy on the rise at number 2. Nick Martinez in the starting rotation was a little bit of a surprise. Nick Martinez was signed as a guy that could either start or relieve, but he was outstanding in spring. He had one start against the Dodgers. The Dodgers A lineup with Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, and he mowed them down. He was perfect. He was perfect in the start until the rain came and actually called the game. I think he went 5 perfect innings against that Dodgers lineup. So he had a great spring. The big Montas, Green, and Ashcraft are safe in the rotation, barring injury. Nick Lodolo is coming back on April 10th as long as everything goes according to plan. So the question is, as long as there's not some other injury, which is always another possibility, is does Lodolo replace Martinez or Abbott? I think the answer to that question is a little more complex because I think it also is how's the bullpen doing? Does the bullpen need Nick Martinez? If the bullpen really needs Nick Martinez and Nick Martinez maybe doesn't necessarily dominate his first couple starts, I think you just slide Martinez to the bullpen and you leave Abbott in the rotation and you put Lodolo in. But if Nick Martinez is dominant, the bullpen's fine. I think Andrew Abbott probably gets pushed down to AAA, which probably shocks a lot of people, but I don't really see another scenario unless there's an injury. Do you see it any different, Craig?
No, the only thing I would say is that Andrew Abbott struggled towards the end of the year, and I think he was getting worn down. So he's a candidate for me to slide into the bullpen. If Nick Martinez comes out and continues to shove like he was over the spring, maybe moving Abbott to the bullpen and only using him in 2 or 3 inning spurts at most will allow us to save his arm. And if he's pitching well, there's nothing stopping him from sliding back into the rotation or allowing David Bell to really give guys a rest here or there. Ultimately, when we talk about the depth, I think it's really going to be focused on, assuming all players are healthy, it's really going to have to be focused on how do we ensure that our rotation stays healthy for the 162 games, hopefully plus come the playoffs, not necessarily otherwise. So, Andrew Abbott being able to come out of the bullpen and throw a couple innings may serve as the benefit there. Obviously, Nick Martinez can fill a similar role. He's shown that in the past. But again, if you've got guys coming out and shove, Abbott potentially to AAA or potentially to the bullpen makes sense to me.
All right, and then looking at the bullpen as it stands on opening day, Alexis Diaz, of course, your closer, an all-star closer. You got Lucas Sims, Buck Farmer, Fernando Cruz back, as well as TJ Antone. The additions, the big one was Emilio Pagan. Reds paid him $8 million, which is quite a bit for a reliever, especially for the Reds. He's a guy that started spring hurt, but his last couple outings was really solid after kind of some rough first outings. So he's a guy to watch. It's interesting to see where he kind of slots in. Is he immediately going to be thrown towards the back of the bullpen, or the Reds going to kind of ease him in since he did start camp late? The Reds added Brent Suter, a local guy. The interesting thing about him is the Reds have kind of been stretching him out. I know I was talking to Charlie Goldsmith, and they actually had him plan to go 3 innings at one point. He had a rough outing and didn't go that long, but they are planning to pitch him more of a long reliever type. So that's something to watch. And then a last-minute signing for the Reds. They got Justin Wilson. He didn't make the Dodgers. The Reds picked him up. He's a guy that looked really good at times this spring. A guy that has worked on a new slider that has really turned him into a weapon. I think he might be the underrated piece of that bullpen that we get to the end of the year, and we go, Justin Wilson's a really, really big key to this bullpen for the Reds. Anything there stand out, Craig?
I think right now, as the bullpen lays out, you're fine. It'll be, when Sam Moll comes back, are you going to look and have 3 left-handed arms in your bullpen, or are you going to maybe send Justin Wilson or Brent Suter? I guess packing. I can't imagine that either of them have options, but who knows? So that'll be a question for me. Brent Suter obviously is a different type of pitcher than the Reds have had in the past year or so. Not necessarily a hard thrower, but gets soft contact and gets out. So the left-handed bullpen spots will be the storyline for me. Obviously, the other one is TJ Antone and his health, right? When he came back last year, threw pretty well, and then again got was sore again afterwards, I guess. So seeing his health will certainly be an interesting story over the course of the year as well.
All right. I'll run through the guys that have options just so kind of everyone is aware. There's a lot of guys that don't, like Craig said. There are a lot of guys that if you try to take them off the roster and send them to AAA, you'll risk losing them. The guys that have options are Alexis Diaz. He's not going to get option unless things really, really go wrong. Fernando Cruz has options. TJ Antone has options. On the IL, Sam Moll and Alex Young have options, but no one else does. So Fernando Cruz and TJ Antone, you better pitch really well because the Reds have the ability to send you down and not risk losing anyone, which I know people say, oh, you got to have the best pitchers on the roster. And I mean, I understand that logic, but it's a long season. And how many guys did the Reds have to call up throughout last year? You don't want to be dumping guys in April and May that you may need later on. So Cruz and Antone, I think those guys are the 2 guys to watch that might be kind of pitching for their spot on the roster. And as mentioned, when we were talking with Tom Nichols, Tony Santillan had an incredible spring, and really, I just was a numbers game why he didn't make the bullpen. So that's kind of the things to watch there. The NL Central, this is the PECOTA projections, and I'm assuming if you're one of the people that we're kind of wanting a rundown, you probably don't know what PECOTA is, so let me run through it. PECOTA is kind of the gold standard in terms of projections. There's no perfect projections. Baseball is one of the most unpredictable games. Reds were projected to lose close to 100 games last year and ended up winning 82. So projections are certainly not always right, but this is the projections. And I know people will look at the Reds projected to win 79 if you round up and go, oh my gosh, they're only projected to win 79. I think the big key there, though, is the Cardinals are only projected to win 82. And so you're only math on the fly. You're only 5 games behind them, as opposed to the NL West. I think the Dodgers are projected to win 101, and the Giants are at 85, and the Braves are at 100, and the next is the Phillies at like 85. So while, yes, the Reds may be projected at 79, they're well within any sort of margin of error to win the NL Central. And then also you're playing against teams that aren't projected to win a lot of games more than any other team. So you can maybe stack up some more wins as opposed to teams like the Phillies who have to play the Braves, a ton of times, and the the teams in the NL West who have to play the Dodgers a ton of times. So I think, look, I think the Reds are really close here. I think the Reds can make the playoffs. They'll need things to go right, but I think every team in the NL Central needs things to go right to win the division. And then, Craig, you mentioned it earlier, but the Pittsburgh Pirates, I'm surprised they're only projected at 71. I think they're a lot better than that. But how they play, especially early in the season, really might determine how this NL Central race goes. Because if they're actually a 71 win team, then you're going to have more teams up at the top stacking some more wins. But yeah, that'll be kind of interesting to track here, Craig.
Yeah, I think other teams, being projected to win 100 games or whatever, is fine and dandy. That race will be not super close in those divisions, it doesn't seem. But when you look at the NL Central, and realistically, it feels like it can go any way. It'll be interesting to see. I think having the Reds projected at 78 wins is certainly low, but I think it just shows the competitiveness that's expected from the NL Central. I think a lot of these teams are going into the season with some unknowns, whether it be injury related or new signings or young guys that they're going to be relying on to really propel them through the season. It'll be interesting to see. I think like you said, the Pirates at 71 wins certainly feels low. And if they can win closer to 80 games, then that certainly is going to take wins from other teams in the division as well. It's shaping up to be similar to last year, where 82 wins is going to be competing to get into the playoffs. I still think that the Reds have the ability to be winning in the 86 to 88 range if they stay healthy and everything goes their way. But again, it's just so much of it is unknown in baseball that it's really hard to put a whole lot of weight into preseason projections. I mean, what was the Reds' projected win total last year, and where did they end up? So, it just I don't put a whole lot of weight into it. Probably similar to the weight I put into spring training stats.
The betting odds are a little bit more favorable actually for the Reds. The Reds are quite a big gap between them and the Brewers in terms of winning the NL Central. I saw one no free ads betting site had the Reds at plus 150 to make the playoffs, which that's right there. I mean, that's like right on the cusp. You're pretty much going to always, if it's a 50-50 team, you're going to get some extra juice betting them to make the playoffs. So, yeah, I mean, look, the Reds are right there. I think one thing to kind of watch is you're kind of watching early season games. I think if you're a Reds fan, you want the Dodgers and Braves to just win all the time. You want them to rack up wins. You want them to win 110 plus games, because that's going to make everyone else have less wins in the National League. And like you said, Craig, 82 might get you in if the Dodgers and Braves both win 110 plus. Now, if those teams are only like 90 win teams, then you're going to see the last couple wild card spots go up a little bit, and it'll be a little bit more you have to have a higher threshold to get in.
Yeah. If we were betting men, which, as some of you may know, we are, I certainly don't expect the Reds to finish in third. I think there's a lot of credit being given to the Cardinals and the Brewers that maybe their rosters don't command right now. But again, I think sometimes with these projections, the historical value of the franchise, although not supposed to be weighted, certainly comes into play. And so when teams like the Brewers and the Cardinals have historically run the division, you're going to see that relayed into projections, whether it's supposed to be or not. And so Sonny Gray, these projections also, it's worth noting, came out before spring training started and before any injuries went down. So, if they reran these projections, that certainly could change things. But I think ultimately the season and the NL Central storyline is just going to be a close race for a majority of the season. And the Reds just need to stay healthy and avoid long losing streaks. I don't think either one of us expect a duplicate of the 12-game winning streak that they had last year, but if they can avoid some of those 6 to 8 game skids, I think it puts them in a really good position come the end of the year.
Yes, and I do think when you have teams that are this close together, bunched in terms of projections, health is probably going to be what comes down to. And the Reds have a lot of injuries, but so does just about everyone else in the division outside of the Cubs. So it'll be a fun season to follow for sure. All right, well, thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in today. This was a lot of fun. Thanks to all of the incredible guests that came on. This is a really busy time for all those beat writers. They have a lot of different obligations. So appreciate them coming on and helping us out with this preview show. Running through again real quick our plans for tomorrow, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m., very early. I don't know. Hopefully I can wake up. I'm not an early riser. And I don't have my kid in the morning telling me, Dad, get up. Your alarm's going off, buddy, because he wakes up at like 4 o'clock in the morning. But anyways, Lord willing, I'll be down at Great America Ballpark with Trace and Justin Kinner. We'll be live on 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. You can listen online. Also, if you're in the Cincinnati area or Dayton, you should be able to pick that up on AM. We're going to hopefully simulcast that on YouTube. Fingers crossed on that. If not, try to get some video or something for that as well. Off the Bench will be back sort of normal tomorrow at 10 a.m. Elliot will be hosting because me and Trace will be downtown. He's got a great lineup of guests coming on, previewing opening day, and it's going to be an extended Off the Bench. Me and Trace will join at some point. We'll go into the afternoon at least a little bit. We're going to hopefully do a little bit of content during the game. That's kind of still in flux. We'll let you know about that tomorrow on Off the Bench. And then, of course, our first official Chatterbox Reds live post-game show after opening day. We'll go live in the 9th inning. Me and Trace will be in studio tomorrow together, which is, I think, the first time we've ever done a Chatterbox Reds live show in studio together. So that'll be fun, and hopefully we'll have you all tune in all year long. If you haven't liked the stream, you're still watching, like it now. Appreciate it. I know a lot of people probably going to watch this. Hopefully a lot of people watch this tonight, kind of getting themselves ready for opening day with some of the guests we had on. But Craig, really appreciate you coming on and helping me make this happen. I couldn't have done it without you, my friend.
Always a pleasure. Always enjoy talking Reds baseball with you, Nick, and certainly appreciate everybody in the chat. Felt like a really engaged, positive chat today, and appreciate some of the questions that came in and contributing to the conversation as well. So we love you all, Nutcutter Nation, and let's go Reds.
All right. I'm going to go pack. I'm going to clip some stuff up. I'm going to go get an oil change, and I'm going to head to Cincinnati. Have a great day, everyone. Most importantly, go Reds.